Chapter 1166. So Ming suddenly felt a piercing headache in his mind, and then he tossed down the young woman in his hand and held his head while letting out shrill cries without end. That poisonous scorpion was an illusion created by his spiritual power. Since it was defeated, it naturally damaged his soul. Lu Ziyuan was dumbfounded. "Who's there?" The surrounding strong cultivators from fallen spirits sect all rushed out and surveyed their surroundings with a sinister look on their faces. The next moment, a white-haired young man descended from the sky. The young man's gaze was cold, and there was a dense, baleful aura between his brows. "Who are you? How dare you obstruct our fallen spirits sect?" One of the fallen spirits sect's Wu Zongs took a step forward and rose into the air. His expression was ferocious. Yichen lifted his eyes and looked around. When he saw the altar that seemed to have turned into hell, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. This person must be an expert sent by an enemy, origin immortal. One of the fallen spirits sect's martial kings narrowed his eyes as his killing intent surged. "Kill him." Boom! In the blink of an eye, several powerful fighters from the fallen spirits sect leaped into the air and charged towards Yichun. The yin energy around their bodies increased exponentially. "You deserve to die." A voice that was as cold as winter came out of Yi Chen's mouth. He scanned with his divine consciousness and immediately suppressed the surroundings like heavenly might. Bang, bang, bang. The few strong cultivators from fallen spirits sect who were charging towards Lin Fan had their bodies disintegrated into a mist of blood. The fallen spirits sect martial king, who was the furthest away, spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was filled with shock. Who was this person? How terrifying! The killing intent in Yi Chen's eyes did not diminish. He leaped to the ground and charged at Suan Ming and the rest. "Fellow Taoist, let's talk things out." Suan Ming's expression changed drastically. His heart was filled with fear as he shouted, "I am the elder of the fallen spirits sect, Ming." He thought that Yichun was a martial saint like him. Moreover, Yichun was merciless, so he had no choice but to threaten Yichun. Yichun did not even look at that person. His pressure covered the place. Then he slammed his palm down and crushed that person's body and soul directly. "Devil. This person is a devil." The surrounding disciples of fallen spirits sect were shocked as they scrambled to escape in all directions. "All of you should die." Then a mighty voice came from the sky. It was like a thunderclap that shook the heavens and the earth. In an instant, the bodies of countless people at the scene exploded, turning into a red mist that was on the verge of materializing. Throughout the entire process, Lu Ziyuan and the gagged girl watched in horror. In their eyes, Suan Ming and the others were already formidable like gods on the earth, yet they were annihilated by this white-haired young man with a raise of his hand. While he was still in a daze, he saw the white-haired young man looking at him coldly before slowly walking over. Plop! Lu Ziyuan's body trembled violently, and then he knelt down heavily on the ground and said with a trembling voice, "Minister of Lin County, Lu Ziyuan greets the immortal. Scram!" Yichen waved his sleeve and sent the father and daughter flying several kilometers away. At the same time, he said, "The 3,000-meter forbidden area will kill anyone who enters." After saying that, he lowered his head and looked at the dense underground spirit veins around the altar again. Spiritual qi that was visible to the naked eye reverberated between heaven and earth, as if it was trying to maintain this formation. In order to set up the 10,000 Ghost Devourer formation to intercept the Daluo dynasty's attack, the Great Kuan dynasty did not hesitate to move all the spirit veins in the country here. Disregarding the lives of over 100 people to use such a sinister technique, it seems like the Great Kuan dynasty shouldn't exist in this world. Yi Chen's expression was calm as he sensed the abundant spiritual energy between heaven and earth. There was a smile in his eyes instead. "This spirit vein has benefited me. Perhaps I can use the spiritual energy here to break through to God transformation stage." As soon as he finished speaking, with a wave of his hand, he directly set up a defensive barrier within a radius of 3,000 meters. Then he sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. As the tip of his nose began to move rhythmically, every pore on his body moved as well. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth surged toward him at a speed visible to the naked eye. Several kilometers away, as soon as Lu Ziyuan landed, he helped the white-clothed girl up. He removed the cloth from her mouth and cried tears of joy. "Tong Tong, are you all right?" "Father, I'm fine." The father and daughter hugged their heads and cried. Clearly, they had yet to snap back to their senses from the earlier scene. After a while, the white-clothed girl looked at the huge altar a few kilometers away. "Father, was that an immortal?" "It must be an immortal." Lu Ziyuan looked grateful. He knew very well that Yi Chun killed the people from the fallen spirit sect, but did not kill them. That was undoubtedly a great favor. "Father, I want to be that immortal's disciple." The white-clothed girl gripped the corner of her father's shirt tightly and walked toward the altar. "No!" Lu Ziyuan pulled her back immediately and said with a bitter smile, "That immortal said that anyone who enters the forbidden area will die. Let's go back quickly." "No, I want to wait for him." The white-clothed girl was extremely stubborn. In the capital region of the Great Kuan Dynasty, in a gloomy palace that looked like hell. Boom, 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 with a series of explosions, countless soul tablets shattered in the fallen spirit sect. "Suan Ming is dead," an old man wrapped in sinister energy suddenly said. Although he's a two-revolution martial saint, even if he encountered an enemy martial saint, he should be able to escape with his soul, right? Not necessarily. Another gloomy old man appeared and said coldly, "I heard that the old man with the surname Wu from the Daoyuo dynasty is here too. Could it be that he attacked?" "It should be." The fallen spirit sect master narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "We can't afford to lose the 10,000 spirit devouring formation. Supreme Elders, it seems like we have to make a trip to Lin and County." At the altar in Lin and County, after the last bit of spiritual energy in the world was refined, Yichen opened his eyes slowly and mumbled, "Now that my true origin energy has been replenished, it's time to communicate with heaven and earth with my intent. Shattering nascent soul," he said softly and closed his eyes again. He stretched his arms, and the nascent soul in his dantian slowly dissipated. "My intent is life and death." As a murmur came out of his mouth, traces of a mysterious intent spread out with him as the center. The life and death intent enveloped 30 meters, 60 meters, 300 meters, 1,500 meters, 10,000 meters. In the end, it enveloped the entire Lin and County and even the entire Great Kuan Dynasty. At that moment, everyone in the entire Great Kuan Dynasty, from the cultivators to the mortals, no matter what they were doing, could sense the change. It was a wonderful feeling. It was like a blessing to the soul, but it was also like the will of heaven and earth was whispering silently. At that moment, all the mortals seemed to have sensed something and knelt in Yi Chen's direction. They could not help but worship him. On the other hand, the cultivators were extremely terrified. What they felt was an oppressive might, a will of supremacy between heaven and earth. Under such a will, they were filled with endless panic. End of this chapter. Chapter 1167. Bang, bang, bang. Countless cultivators also knelt on the ground in worship. The higher one's cultivation base was, the more they could sense the subtle changes, and the more frightened they were. At that moment, all the martial sages of the entire Great Kuan Dynasty came out of closed-door cultivation. Their expressions changed greatly as they felt uneasy. At the peak of the Great Kuan Dynasty's imperial city, an old man in a golden robe looked in the direction of Lin and Commandery and said with difficulty, Is someone trying to break through to the Emperor's throne realm?" Behind him, there were countless figures with powerful auras. Even the current Emperor of Great Kuan was among them. As soon as his voice fell, the people behind him immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Their expressions changed, and disbelief surged out from their eyes. An Emperor's throne powerhouse. An Emperor's throne powerhouse was about to be born in the Zenith Heaven immortal realm. The son of Great Kuan stared at the golden-robed old man with boundless joy in his eyes. "Patriarch, who are you?" Who is it? The reason why his great Kuan was dragged into the Hundred Empire War and even had his fate manipulated by the great Ein Imperial dynasty was also because there were no Emperor's Throne experts in his country. If the great Kuan had an Emperor's Throne expert, the Central Plains would definitely face a new reshuffle, and the great Kuan would definitely rise. This pressure is too vast. The golden-robed elder stared at the direction of Lin and County. This person is in the north. Who is he? Gather everyone and come with me. He pointed in the direction of Lin and County and said, this person is in the critical period of breaking through. It's fine if he's from Dakuin, but if he's not, boundless killing intent swept across the world. At the same time, less than 100 miles away from Lin and County, an army of up to 300,000 people was moving forward. Reporting, there's no one within a 50-kilometer radius. Reporting, there's no one within a radius of 80 li. As the scouts returned to report, Liang Wu, who was in the army, frowned even more deeply. His goal was to launch an all-out attack and completely conquer the great Kuan dynasty's Lin and County. For this, he had brought 300,000 soldiers and was even prepared for a fierce battle. However, as the army pushed forward for hundreds of miles, they didn't see a single person. All they saw were corpses and a tragic scene. Out of the quality of a professional soldier, he followed the carriage in the army and whispered, "Old Wu, something is wrong. There is not a single living person in the entire Lin and County. You suspect that this is Dakuin's trap?" The purple-robed elder in the carriage frowned. There's definitely something fishy going on. Liang Wu nodded slowly. I suggest we reorganize on the spot and send out all the scouts at the same time. At this moment, a fast horse came from the front. A scout landed on the ground and reported, "General, we've captured a few hundred people. Bring me there." Liang Wu was overjoyed. He led his men and followed after them. Only then did he realize that the so-called several hundred people were actually commoners who were fleeing from a disaster. The scout stepped forward and said, "General, I have asked. They all said that they are the people of Lin and County. 2 hours ago, there were black-clothed people massacring the villages. Then why are they still alive?" Liang Wu frowned. The scouts said, according to them, an immortal saved them. That immortal even told them to head north, to a place called Dongzhong Village. Immortal? The purple-robed elder who followed up smiled disdainfully, thinking that it was a lie. However, after hearing the words Dongzhong Village, his face slightly froze. Did they say what the immortal looked like? The scouts said, according to them, the immortal is very powerful. They couldn't see his face clearly, but he seemed to have a head of white hair. Could this person be? The purple-robed elder squinted his eyes and couldn't help but think of the golden sword he saw in Dongzhong Village. At that moment, an incomparably wonderful artistic conception swept over and poured into everyone's heart, accompanied by a faint pressure. The purple-robed elder was startled at first. Then his expression changed drastically. This is someone trying to break through to the Emperor's throne realm. Plop, plop, plop. Under such an artistic conception, the 300,000 soldiers all knelt on the ground and uncontrollably knelt in the direction of Lin and County. "Old Wu, look." Liang Wu stretched out his hand and pointed to the southern sky. The purple-robed elder hurriedly looked over and found that all the clouds in the sky were activated and surged toward the sky above Lin and County. From afar, he could see that the sky above Lin and County was filled with dense clouds that looked like a huge cotton candy. As expected, the purple-robed elder gasped and said with a horrified expression, "I was right. Someone is trying to break through to the Emperor's throne realm. Could it be that someone in the Great Kuan realm is about to be crowned as an emperor?" Liang Wu was even more terrified. If an Emperor's throne expert was born in the Great Kuan dynasty, then all his efforts in the Zenith Heaven realm would be in vain. Once the Emperor's throne was enraged, the world would be swept away. "General Liang, you can let the army return the way they came. I must go and take a look." The purple-robed elder took a deep breath and said. He then broke through the void and rushed toward Lin and County. Lin and County outside the altar. At that moment, Lu Ziyuan and his daughter had already knelt on the ground, enduring the impact of the pressure coming from the center of the altar with fear. At the next moment, the void beside them began to distort. Then a dozen figures broke through the void and arrived. The leading person wore a golden robe and stared at the altar with his golden eyes. Someone is trying to break through to the emperor's throne realm. Ha ha! I didn't expect the old emperor to come. It seems like this is a big commotion. As the void shook, a hunchbacked elder tore through the void and landed on the ground. Swoosh, 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 another dozen or so figures descended. In just a few breaths, more than 30 people descended, and each of them was a martial sage expert. All the martial sages in the great Kuan realm are here. The Zenith Heaven realm purple-robed elder, who was hiding in the distance, was shocked. His gaze fell on the golden-robed elder. Even the old emperor of the great Kuan dynasty has arrived. Everyone, I know my great Kuan very well, but I've never heard of anyone who could touch the emperor's throne realm. The golden-robed elder looked at everyone and said slowly, "If the person who is breaking through inside is one of you, please make an announcement as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be bad if there is a misunderstanding." The others did not say a word, and their eyes flickered. A cold glint flashed in the golden-robed elder's eyes, and killing intent surged like a tide. "Looks like this person is most likely not from my great Kuan dynasty." Then he took a step forward. He seemed to want to approach the altar. "You can't go in." At this moment, the white-clothed girl hurriedly said, "That senior said that anyone who enters the forbidden area will die." "Forbidden area?" The golden-robed elder smirked coldly. Then he shot his gaze towards the center of the altar and said loudly, "I'm the first emperor of the great Kuan dynasty, Huyanjua. May I ask which fellow is breaking through here? Please come out and meet me." Rumble. As soon as he said that, a thunderous sound suddenly sounded above the altar. A terrifying pressure enveloped the entire altar, as if it wanted to crush it. Huyanjua's intentions were not pure. He clearly wanted Yi Chun to show himself. In reality, he wanted to destroy his breakthrough. Chapter 1168. In the middle of the altar, Yi Chun sat cross-legged on the stream. A huge five-colored light lotus formed around him. The light lotus enveloped him completely. When the last trace of nascent soul power disappeared, there was a translucent little light figure in his dantian. The little light figure imitated his movements and sat cross-legged in his dantian, forming a seal with both hands. At the next moment, the little light figure turned from translucent to solid. Its body gradually grew until it was no different from an ordinary person. Whether it was its facial features or temperament, it was no different from Yi Chun. At that moment, a thunderous voice suddenly exploded between heaven and earth. "I'm Huyanjua, the first emperor of the great Kuan dynasty. May I ask which fellow has broken through here? Please come out and meet me." As soon as the voice fell, the spiritual energy between heaven and earth became chaotic. It charged at Yi Chun's location like a torrent. At that moment, the primordial spirit in Yi Chun's body opened its eyes at the same time. It was like an emperor had awakened. There was no emotion in his eyes that a human should have. There was only endless coldness. His eyes were like those of a newborn baby. They were black and white without any impurities, and they carried an indescribable aura of spirituality. His gaze passed through the five-colored lotus outside his body and saw Huyanjua and the rest who were thousands of meters away. He saw everyone in the great Kuan realm like a god looking down on the world. The path of cultivation focused on refining essence into qi, refining qi into spirit, and refining spirit into void. Soul formation was to condense a primordial spirit in one's body. As long as the primordial spirit was not destroyed, the physical body would exist forever. Once one entered soul formation, it meant that they could borrow the power of heaven and earth. "Is everyone here?" Yi Chun swept his gaze across and saw Huyanjua and the rest who were thousands of meters away from the altar. "Not bad. Not a single one is left behind. I'll send all of you on your way." He stood up slowly, and the five-colored lotus that wrapped around him cracked gently. The clouds in the sky dissipated. Emperor Brush shot out from his body. Congratulations on breaking through to soul formation, Your Majesty. You're just a step away from ascending to the immortal world. At the same time, thousands of meters away from the altar, seeing that the phenomenon in the sky had completely dissipated, everyone present was in a state of confusion. He succeeded? Could it be that the person inside has stepped into the Emperor's throne realm? Someone narrowed his eyes, feeling uneasy. No one responded to him, because everyone present was a martial saint. Even though they were very close to the Emperor's throne realm, they had never experienced breaking through to the Emperor's throne realm. Ha ha ha! The golden-robed old man, Huyenjua's expression changed several times. Suddenly, he let out a loud laugh. Failure. This person has failed. As soon as these words came out, the crowd turned pale. A thin old man at the scene couldn't help but narrow his eyes and say, "Why does Emperor Huyen say this?" The others all looked at him. Huyenjua was the first imperial lord of the great Kuan dynasty. He had existed for the longest time and was an 8-revolution martial saint. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the #1 person in the great Kuan realm. It could be said that among all the martial saints present, his words were the most persuasive. Meeting everyone's gaze, Huyenjua coldly smiled and said, "Everyone, you may not know this, but this old man was fortunate enough to see a powerhouse trying to break through to the Emperor's throne realm. At that time, when this person was about to succeed, a void shackle appeared in the world. This void shackle is the greatest barrier that prevents anyone from stepping into the Emperor's throne realm." He seemed to be reminiscing and said, "At that time, this old man's old friend also encountered the void shackle. Unfortunately, he failed to break the void shackle and died." "Emperor Hien, you mean that this person failed to break the so-called void shackle when he broke through?" Someone was surprised. The rest of the people's eyes lit up. If they hadn't heard it with their own ears, they wouldn't have known that the process of breaking through to the Emperor's throne realm was so secretive. Huyen shook his head slightly and sneered. This person couldn't even draw out the void shackle, let alone break it. That's why this old man concluded that he failed. Someone said with a regretful expression, "In that case, we missed a peerless opportunity to witness the birth of an emperor's throne powerhouse. Everyone, let's go in and take a good look at who is breaking through here," Huyenjua said with a faint smile. Then, he took a deep breath and took the lead with a murderous look on his face. He was already sure that the person in the middle of the altar was definitely not from the Daluo dynasty, and the price was naturally death. Boom! The 30 martial saints rushed toward the center of the altar in a mighty manner. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. The white-clothed girl who stayed behind asked with a puzzled expression, "Father, what are they talking about? Did that immortal fail? I'm afraid these people are going to harm that person." Lu Yuan sighed to himself. Although he was not from the cultivation world, the 30 or so people present still gave him a great deal of pressure. To him, Huyenjua and the rest had the advantage in numbers. If they really wanted to harm Yi Chun, the latter might have they failed? The purple-clothed old man who was hiding in the distance narrowed his eyes and said thoughtfully, "Judging from the reactions of Huyenjua and the rest, the person who is breaking through to the Emperor's throne stage is probably not from Great Kun." The distance of 3,000 meters was covered in the blink of an eye. Almost at the same time, Yi Chun put away the Emperor brush. Huyenjua and the rest landed less than 30 meters away from him. At that moment, countless eyes looked at Yi Chun. When they saw that the person they wanted to see was only a young man in his 20s, Huyenjua and the rest were shocked. "This person is so young? I think I'm overflowing with talent, but it took me 1,000 years to reach the martial saint stage. Even if the other party is an old monster who can maintain his appearance, he shouldn't be this young, right?" At that moment, everyone present was shocked. Yi Chun ignored their gazes. However, after glancing at the 30 or so people, he was slightly surprised. There were as many as 30 martial saints. In the Tianfengxi area where he was previously, there were only a dozen martial saints at most, and this great Kuan had double that number. This showed that it was indeed the central state. Hu Yinjue stared at Yi Chun for a while before saying expressionlessly, "Did you break through again just now?" "So what if I did?" Yi Chun said coldly. Hu Yinjue's pupils constricted slightly as he spoke again. "You look unfamiliar. I don't think you're from Great Kuan, right?" "That's right." Yi Chun nodded slightly. An old man in a black robe with a snake staff took a step forward and sneered. "So, did you kill the people from my fallen spirits sect here?" "Yes, I did." Yi Chun nodded. "Fellow Taoist, you're really arrogant." Hu Yinjue was so angry that he laughed. "Since you're not from Great Kuan, you entered Great Kuan's territory to break through and kill the people from Great Kuan's fallen spirits sect. Do you think Great Kuan is a vegetable garden?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1169. Following his words, cold killing intent erupted. Cold killing intent exploded at the scene as they locked onto Yi Chun. "You're wrong." Yi Chun stood with his hands behind his back and shook his head as if he was disdainful. "It's too much of a compliment to describe Dakuin as a vegetable garden. In my opinion, Dakuin is at most a cesspool. The people in it are filthy and smelly. What shameless boasting. You're just a piece of trash who failed to break through. How dare you be so arrogant in front of us?" A thin old man sneered mercilessly. Then he moved and slapped his hand down to grab Yi Chun's head. "Let me fight you." Rumble. As his palm struck, the space above Yi Chun's head showed signs of flowing backward. Then it was torn apart forcefully. However, Yi Chun did not do anything as if he did not see it. He merely lifted his head and glanced at him. Two gleams of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. "Ah!" The man screamed and fell to the ground with a thud. His eyes were wide open as if he had died with a grievance. How is this possible? Everyone's pupils constricted violently. One had to know that the person who attacked just now was the patriarch of the Grade 8 sect, Violet Cloud Doc, in Dakuin, a second-rank martial saint. A glance. However, the white-haired young man in front of him merely glanced at him, and the patriarch of Violet Cloud, Doc, died on the spot. Junior brother. With a furious roar, a martial saint broke through the air. He opened his mouth and spat out a huge cauldron. He then pressed it down on Yi Chun. However, Yi Chun remained unmoved. However, a gleam flashed through his eyes again. Rumble. The cauldron, which was known as a spirit treasure, shattered. That person screamed and turned into a bloody mist. Dead silence. The world was dead silent. In just a few breaths of time, 2 martial saints had died. From the beginning to the end, they did not even see how the other party had attacked. "Who exactly are you, sir?" The old emperor of Dakuin dynasty, Hu Yinjue, sucked in a breath of cold air as he stared at Yi Chun. As an 8 revolution martial saint, he believed that he could kill the 2 people from before, but it would definitely not be as easy as Yi Chun. Thinking to this point, a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that this person is a saint from certain sacred ground? The person who will kill you. He then took a step forward. Lightning whizzed on his right hand as he charged at Hu Yinjue and the rest. Aren't you being too arrogant? Even if you have strange techniques, you're still just a martial saint trying to break through to the emperor's throne realm. Hu Yinjue flew into a rage. His killing intent surged out like a tidal wave. "Everyone, let's attack together and kill this person. Kill him. Extract his soul and refine it." Boom! In the blink of an eye, the killing intent of the 30 martial saints surged into the sky as they attacked together. Their killing intent covered the entire sky. Die! One of them opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of golden light that slashed towards Yifutian. It was a golden flying sword that let out a tiger's roar that could cut through the sea. Clang! Yi Chun flicked his finger and forcefully crushed the golden sword. The broken pieces shot back and shattered the other party's body instantly. Kill! The 2 martial saints charged over. Their hands covered the sky and shook the world. They seemed to want to beat Yi Chun, who had his back to them, into meat paste. Both of them were 5th Revolution martial saints. In the Great Kuan realm, their combat prowess could be ranked in the top 10. Ultimate Emperor shocks the world. Hu Yinjue let out a long roar. 9 extremely sharp an overbearing golden dragon Shi made the sun lose its color. They surged at Yi Chun, clearly trying to distract Yi Chun. Yi Chun remained unmoved in the face of the attacks from the two people behind him. Instead, he extended his palm and clenched it at the 9 dragon Chi from afar. Rumble, as the sky shook violently, the 9 golden dragon Chi were actually annihilated into thin air by his grasp. Ugh! Ninja could not help but spit a mouthful of blood. Die! At the same time, the 2 Fifth Revolution martial saints who attacked from behind him charged at him. Their hands were almost about to land on Yi Chen's head. The 2 of them could not help but sneer. At that moment, they did not know if it was an illusion, but they realized that a strand of white hair had fallen from Yi Chen's shoulder. This strand of white hair grew with the wind, and like a heavenly sword, it instantly chopped off their heads, annihilating even their souls. What technique is this? Some of the martial saints who were participating in the battle were extremely shocked. He killed 2 martial saints with just a strand of hair? Rumor has it that an emperor's throne powerhouse can make the sea boil with a drop of blood essence, and a strand of hair can kill an army. An emperor's throne powerhouse. This person is an emperor's throne powerhouse. Everyone couldn't help but tremble, as if they had seen something terrifying. Who exactly are you? Huyanjua felt a chill run from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. Earlier, he thought that Yi Chun had failed to break through. However, the other party's few simple techniques had mercilessly wiped out the only fantasy in his heart. I told you, I'm the one who killed you. Yi Chen's expression did not change as he charged at him directly. Hu Yanzhuo retreated and roared, Senior, I'm the first emperor of the Great Kuan dynasty. I, Great Kuan, am a subordinate of the Great Yin dynasty. I know the emperor of the Great Yin, Di Xianxiang. The emperor of the Great Yin dynasty, Di Xianxiang, was a famous emperor's throne powerhouse in Zhongzhou. Then you deserve to die even more. Yi Chun pressed forward step by step, and the coldness in his eyes intensified. The Great Yin dynasty. If the emperor's throne powerhouse of the Great Yin dynasty had not launched a sneak attack and thrown him into the void rift, how could his body have been crushed by the violent void storm? How could he have been left in Zhongzhou with serious injuries, sealed off his 6 senses, and become a fool in the eyes of others? If it was not the Great Yin dynasty, how could he have been separated from his daughter? Since he wanted revenge, he would start with a bloodbath in Great Kuan. This was just the beginning, not the end. No, in the face of life and death, Huyanzhua's entire cultivation base erupted, and a shocking saber gleam suddenly shot out from his body. The saber gleam was like a waterfall, and it was a vast expanse of whiteness. It was as if endless saber intent covered this world, shocking everyone. Final struggle. Yi Chun scoffed coldly. He waved his sleeve and forcefully dispelled the saber intent that filled the sky. When he turned around, he saw Hu Yanzhuo and the other martial saints using this opportunity to break through the void and escape into the distance. Yi Chun stretched out his hand, and his palm swept across the sky. It was like a majestic mountain ridge that stretched for a radius of 3,000 meters, controlling everything. The figures of Hu Yanzhuo and the rest appeared in the sky. When nearly 30 people saw the palm that swept past their heads, they were all shocked to death. End of this chapter. Chapter 1170. Father, W, look at that. What's that? At the same time, the white-clothed girl on the ground stiffened, and her beautiful eyes looked at the sky in disbelief. Lu Ziyuan subconsciously raised his head, and his whole body suddenly froze. He saw a scene that he would never forget in his life. It was a huge hand that stretched for several kilometers. From afar, it looked like an upside-down galaxy. The technique of an emperor's throne powerhouse. The purple-clothed old man who was hiding in the dark looked at the huge hand that could collapse the sky. His face was filled with shock. This is the technique of an emperor's throne powerhouse. An emperor's throne powerhouse was the peak of the ancient desolate realm. A single roar could shatter mountains and rivers. They were invincible and looked down on the world. He did not expect to witness it with his own eyes today. Bang, 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 bang. Practically in that instant, bursts of bloody mist burst out in succession in the void, followed by the appearance of several strange phenomena. A phenomenon from the heavens. This was the sign of a saint's fall. No, I can't accept this. Huyenjua spat blood repeatedly after witnessing the martial saints around him being killed by Yi Chen's hand. He separated, roared, and fled. As the first emperor of the Great Kuan dynasty, I swear to step into the legendary emperor's throne. I want to see the Great Kuan dynasty advance to the Great Kuan dynasty. I can't die. Rumble. Yi Chen's hand extended again. It extended 5 kilometers away directly. It was really like a majestic dragon surging in the sky. Bang! As the hand descended, it directly slapped Huyenjua down from the sky, forcefully slapping him deep into the ground, causing the mountain range to be reduced to flat ground. At that moment, a soul shot out from where Huyenjua had fallen, as if it wanted to escape. Can you escape? Yi Chen mumbled softly. He took a step forward and traversed several kilometers in the blink of an eye. Emperor, save me, save me. Huyenjua's soul was hysterical. Boom! In an instant, the space shook. A giant hand slapped down from the sky, aiming at Yi Chen. You finally can't help but attack. Yi Chen's eyes turned cold, and his killing intent was shocking. Do you think you can do this to me a second time? Break! In the next moment, he charged toward the giant hand and threw a punch with his right hand. Rumble! A loud bang shook heaven and earth. The space collapsed. The arm collapsed under Yi Chen's punch. It's you. Even so, there was still a gasp in the void, and it seemed to be extremely surprised. Yi Chen's voice was mighty. Great Yin's Emperor Lord, Di Xuan Xiang, I'll remember you. I'll kill my way into your great Yin sooner or later. I'll be waiting for you. Following a cold snort, the void returned to its previous tranquility. It was as if the previous exchange was just a dream. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, Ing, who was wearing a black dragon robe, turned into a giant and attacked a golden shadow. His murderous aura soared into the sky. Di Xianbing, how dare you get distracted while fighting me? Yi Chen grabbed Huyenjua's astral body and grinned, revealing his white teeth. Look, even the Emperor's throne powerhouse behind you can't save you. Senior, let me go, let me go. I, Dakuan, can submit to you. I'm willing to be your loyal servant. Huyenjua was in despair. Before he could finish speaking, Yi Chen closed his palm gently. Dust scattered with the wind. An Emperor's throne powerhouse is so terrifying. The purple-clothed old man who was watching from the side trembled. Yi Chen glanced at Lu Ziyuan and his daughter, who were on the ground. Then, he looked at the southeast corner in disdain. Have you seen enough? At that moment, the purple-clothed old man felt an earth-shattering thunder rumble in his ears, causing him to vomit blood repeatedly. He could not care less about the shock inside of him. He leaped out immediately and knelt before Yi Chen respectfully. Wu Gaoman of the Daluo dynasty's martial Saint Mountain greets the emperor. He had never thought of running away. It was because the tragic fate of Huyenjua and the rest was right before his eyes. If an emperor's throne powerhouse wanted to kill a person, he would not be able to escape even if he went to heaven or hell. Daluo dynasty? Yi Chen frowned. Wu Gaoman placed his head on the ground and said in a trembling voice, Sovereign Lord, my Zenith Luo and Zenith Kuan are enemies. In this 100 Empire War, my Zenith Luo is backed by the Great Qin dynasty, and Zenith Kuan is backed by the Great Yin dynasty. By Empire War? Great Qin dynasty? Yi Chen came to a realization and said, Who is the ruler of the Great Qin dynasty? What's the 100 Empire War about? Due to the fact that he had sealed his 6 senses during this period of time, he spent most of his time in a daze. He did not know much about the outside world, and he knew even less about Zhongzhou. Wu Gaoman did not dare to raise his head to look at his dignity, nor did he dare to hide anything. Emperor, you might not know this, but half a month ago, the Great Qin dynasty's ruler, Yingyu, attacked Zhongzhou and established the Great Qin dynasty. He united the Demon region and the entire southern region to invade Zhongzhou. It was also the Great Qin dynasty's ruler who started the 100 Empire War in Zhongzhou. From then on, the ancient desolate realm fell into chaos. Hearing that, Yi Qin's eyes flickered. He shook his head lightly and said, "It's indeed Ing." Even though he was mentally prepared, he did not expect Ing to play such a big game of chess, directly messing up the entire situation in Zhongzhou. He became the ruler of the Great Qin dynasty. Could it be that he has also stepped into the emperor's throne stage? Could it be that he found his avatar? Thinking to this point, he slowly retracted the pressure on Wu Gaomin and landed beside the ladder. Wu Gaomin raised his head subconsciously, and he was shocked. His eyes were filled with disbelief. At first glance, he thought that Yi Chan was very young. He could not believe that such a young person was an emperor's throne powerhouse. At second glance, he felt that Yi Chan was a little familiar. Immediately after, his expression changed slightly as a thought flashed through his mind. He suddenly remembered the portrait that the Great Qin dynasty's envoy had given him before he came. The man in the portrait was exactly the same. Could he be the person the Great Qin dynasty's envoy was looking for? Yi Qin could not help but be surprised when he saw the former staring at him. "You know me?" "No." Wu Gaomin hurriedly shook his head. "How could I know someone like the Great Qin dynasty's ruler? However, you seem to be the person the Great Qin dynasty's ruler is looking for." "Ing is looking for me?" Yi Qin could not help but laugh. Then, he said while smiling, "However, it coincides with my thoughts. Coincidentally, I also want to know what's going on in the Tianfeng Sea area." He was very worried about his daughter. Even though he had killed all the martial saints in the Tianfeng Sea area, the great Li Emperor Shang Wudao was still alive. With Mu Kai Wei and the rest abilities, they would definitely not be able to deal with him. Thinking to this point, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold gleam surged in his pupils. "Great Li Emperor, I'd like to see who can protect you this time." P.S. Chapter 3 has been updated for today. End of this chapter. Chapter 1171. In the ancestral hall of the Great Kuan dynasty. The ancestors of the Great Kuan dynasty were enshrined here. Regardless of whether they were alive or dead, they would leave a soul tablet here to be enshrined. The Emperor of Great Kuan led the many powerhouses and looked at the shattered soul tablets in the ancestral hall in fear. The shattering of the soul tablet meant that the person on it was dead. The second-generation Emperor of Great Kuan, Huyen Lai, is dead. The third-generation Emperor of Great Kuan, Huyen Sun, is dead. The fifth-generation Emperor of Great Kuan, Huyen Lei, is dead. The first-generation Emperor of Great Kuan, Huyen Zhua, is dead. With a series of crackling explosions, the highest row of soul tablets at the top of the ancestral hall exploded. Dead. Huyen Qing, the Emperor of Great Kuan, revealed a look of disbelief. How is this possible? How is this possible? How could the old emperor die? The first-generation emperor was the one who founded the Great Kuan dynasty. His strength was also known as the #1 person in Great Kuan, and he was the closest to the legendary emperor's throne powerhouse. Now, even his soul tablet had shattered. "No, I don't believe it." The Emperor of Great Kuan roared repeatedly, his expression filled with anger and ruthlessness. "Investigate. Investigate ruthlessly. Even if I have to use all the power of Great Kuan, I'll tear this thief into pieces." "Yes." Behind him, a dozen or so voices with powerful auras responded in a heavy tone. Then they were about to rush out. Rumble. Right at this moment, a foot descended from the sky and stepped on the Great Kuan Imperial Palace like a giant splitting the ground. All sorts of screams rang out in the ancestral hall. Some people tried to rush out, but it was too late. That foot was simply too big, and it directly enveloped the entire Great Kuan Imperial Palace. The Great Kuan Imperial family was destroyed. The remaining dozen or so martial saints of Great Kuan were dead. In the air, Yi Chun slowly retracted his right foot. He looked at the purple-clothed old man, Wu Gaomin, who was shocked calmly. "Treat this foot as a gift from me to Ing." In Dongzhong village, the sky gradually brightened. The sun rose from the other side of the mountain, trying to illuminate the entire land. However, in contrast, Eastjiang village was bleak. Broken fences and dilapidated walls could be seen everywhere, as well as the ashes of the fire. Old Zhang led the hundreds of people from Lin and county who had escaped to Dongjiang village and began to repair their temporary residence. It's too tragic. This was old Zhang's only remaining thought. He did not sleep for the entire night. First, he led his men to search every house, trying to find any survivors. However, all he saw were cold and familiar corpses. In other words, the father and daughter were the only survivors in Eastjiang village. As for the hundreds of people who were begging for help, after a night of hard work, coupled with the excessive shock, they were already starving to the point where their limbs were weak. Left with no other choice, he could only find some food elsewhere. Fortunately, there was still half a storehouse of grain left in Squire Zhang's residence. It could be considered as temporarily solving the problem of eating for everyone. The things that troubled ordinary people were nothing more than clothing, food, shelter, and transportation. For refugees, as long as they had something to eat and a place to temporarily stay, they would be satisfied. But what should he do next? Old Zhang knew nothing. After experiencing so many disasters in one night, he was already numb. The only thought in his mind was to survive. When he thought of this, he could not help but glance at his daughter, who was sitting at the entrance of the village and staring blankly at the north. He looked at the half-eaten biscuit in his hand and walked over hesitantly. "Daughter, have some." Chuehua remained unmoved like a stone statue. After a while, she said faintly, "Father, do you think Blockhead will come back?" Through the refugee's narration, she had completely accepted that the so-called Blockhead had immortal-like means. Yes, he will definitely come back. Looking at his daughter's eager gaze, old Zhang felt a little suffocated. He comforted her in a hoarse voice and turned around to make other arrangements. "Blockhead," his daughter exclaimed. He turned his head to look by instinct and saw his daughter stand up and run toward the entrance of the village in high spirits. There, a young man with white hair and green stood slowly. He had a smile on his face, and his green clothes fluttered in the wind. "Blockhead." Chuehua wanted to hug Yi-chun excitedly when she got closer. However, she seemed to have thought of something subsequently and stopped in her tracks. She knew that the person before her was not the Blockhead from the past, but the immortal that her father and the rest were talking about. She was not worthy of an immortal. Yi-chun smiled faintly. He walked over and patted her shoulder lightly. "I'm relieved that you and your daughter are fine." Chuehua's eyes dimmed. She then looked at Yi-chun in a daze and forced a smile. "Have you really recovered your memory?" "That's right." Yi-chun nodded lightly and said, "My surname is Yi and my name is Chun. I ended up here because I was injured by an enemy." "Enemy?" Chuehua's expression changed slightly as she said nervously, "Is that enemy of yours very powerful?" Although she had never seen Yi-chun's means, her father and the rest called him an immortal. Did that mean that the immortal's enemy was also an immortal? "It's all right." Yi-chun shook his head with a smile. "Immortal, benefactor." At this moment, many refugees in ragged clothes rushed over from the village. When they were less than 30 meters away from him, they knelt down in unison, extremely grateful. If Yi-chun had not saved them on the way to Lin County, they would have died long ago. "Everyone, please rise." Yi-chun raised his hand, and everyone realized that they could not help but stand up. They were even more shocked. He swept his gaze across and looked at the helpless and sorrowful faces. He could not help but sigh softly. "Your family died in the flames of war. I sympathize with you, but things will be different from now on." At the next moment, Wu Gaomin landed on the ground from the void. Yi-chun glanced at Wu Gaomin and said, "This is an immortal from the Daluo dynasty. He knows the emperor of Daluo. Daluo is about to attack Great Koan. I believe that he will treat you well after he unifies Great Koan." No one said a word in the face of his comfort. They only looked at Wu Gaomin in disbelief. Meeting everyone's gaze, Wu Gaomin nodded slightly and said, "I can guarantee that when my Daluo army enters the country in the future, they will not bully you. I, the Emperor of Daluo, love the people and will treat you well. I will redistribute the land and give you cattle, tax exemptions, and other policies, cheers came from the crowd. Yichun watched silently. He was not a saint. That was all he could do for these ordinary people. Fortunately, through his conversation with Wu Gaomin along the way, he learned that the Daluo dynasty was different from Great Koan. He believed that after these people became Daluo citizens, they would have a better life. Zhangji Iron Shop in a temporary shed. Yichun could not help but sigh as he looked at the dilapidated walls around him. He had lived here for almost a month. Before he woke up, he had treated this place as his home. Thinking to this point, he could not help but bow to old Zhang and his daughter. Thank you for taking care of me all this time. End of this chapter. Chapter 1172. During the days when he was injured, it was old Zhang who saved him. It was also old Zhang's family who treated him like a family member. Even though Yichun could still recover without all of that, he still owed the other party a favor after all. How could he, Yichun, be an ungrateful person? What are you doing? Old Zhang was shocked by his sudden action and waved his hands repeatedly. I can't. To him, Yichun was an immortal. It was a blessing that he had cultivated for several lifetimes to be able to save an immortal. Of course, Yichun lifted his eyes and said with a smile after bowing to the end, in return, I can fulfill 3 of your requests. What requests? Old Zhang could not react at the moment. Before Yichun could speak, Cui Hua, who was next to him, looked at him and suddenly said, Are you leaving? Yichun said, That's right. Naturally, he would not stay here. Putting aside the fact that this was not his homeland, he still had to look for his daughter, Yuhan, and his parents. Although she was mentally prepared, Cui Hua still felt a lump in her throat after hearing Yichun's affirmative answer. She took a deep breath in and pretended to be strong as she said, We don't want anything. I just want you to remember me and Dad. Although she said that, there were still tears at the corner of her eyes. She did not allow herself to show her weak side. Old Zhang secretly sighed when he heard that. Yichun fell into silence for a few seconds. He then looked at the golden sword in old Zhang's hand. Give me this sword. As soon as the golden sword landed in his hand, he extended his hand and extracted a trace of bloodline power from Cui Hua's body. As he formed a seal with both hands, the bloodline power completely merged with the golden sword. Keep this sword. Yichun passed the golden sword to old Zhang again. If your descendants are in danger of being exterminated, use the Zhang family's bloodline to activate this sword. As soon as this sword is unsheathed, it can kill everything within a radius of 3,000 meters. However, you can only use it 3 times. Don't use it unless it's a critical moment. Remember this. He waved his sleeve, and a few bottles of medicinal pills and a cultivation method landed in old Zhang's hand. The medicinal pills in the bottle are divided into innate pills and some medicinal pills that can improve the human body's potential. The innate pills can allow you and your daughter to live for 100 years. Without waiting for the father and daughter to speak, he continued, As for that cultivation technique, it's called the 3000 style sky shaking hammer technique. It's tailor-made for the 2 of you to forge iron. You can cultivate it, and you can also pass it down to your descendants. However, you must know that a man's wealth is his own ruin. His series of actions caused old Zhang and his daughter to be incomparably shocked, and by the time they recovered from their shock, there was no one in front of them. Blockhead! Cui Hua's tears could no longer be held back as they rushed out. Unfortunately, it was still to no avail. Old Zhang looked at the thing in his hand with a heavy heart. A few seconds later, he bowed to the sky. He knew very well how great of an opportunity Yichun had given the father and daughter. It was also because of this opportunity that their Zhang family would definitely prosper. Yichun looked at the father and daughter on the ground from 100 meters in the air. There was a hint of relief in his eyes. The rise and fall of fate is the heavenly Tao. He murmured, then said to Wu Gaomin, Let's go. What he didn't know was that after he left, Cui Hua still didn't give up searching for him. Unfortunately, they never saw Yichun again until the day the father and daughter died of old age. On the other hand, their descendants had an inexplicable fate with Yichun. The moment Yichun left Dakoan, the Daluo dynasty, which had received the news long ago, sent their army to besiege Dakoan. In less than 3 days, Dakuin fell completely and became a vassal of the Daluo dynasty. Meanwhile, the Daluo emperor treated the people of Dakuin well according to Yi Chen's wishes. Especially in Dongzhong village, Old Zhang became the village chief under the election of the new villagers and renamed Dongzhong village to Immortal village. In the capital of the Daluo dynasty, Chongjing City, Yi Chen walked on the noisy street in green clothes. He lifted his head and looked at both sides of the street. He realized that there were countless peddlers selling their goods. Many scholars in simple clothes walked in and out in groups. It was a peaceful scene. He had to admit that compared to Dakuin, the Daluo dynasty was much smaller. He could tell that the two emperors had different methods. Wu Gaomin followed closely by his side. The dignified martial saint was like a personal servant, introducing the customs of Dakuin to him. Yi Chen nodded from time to time. Just when he was about to continue walking, he suddenly heard a commotion behind him. The ground that was paved with green bricks began to shake violently. Countless people standing in the middle of the road scrambled to dodge to the sides. Rumble. The shaking became more and more intense. Everyone subconsciously looked over and saw a black torrent of steel surging over from the end of the street. It was mixed with a monstrous, ferocious aura. As the black torrent approached, the clouds above everyone's heads were covered by the murderous aura. It blotted out the sky and the sun. It was terrifying. As the black torrent approached, a black and ferocious flag appeared before everyone's eyes. Yi. On the fluttering flag, the word Yi could be faintly seen. It seemed to want to stir the wind and clouds. At that moment, Wu Gaomin, who was next to Yi Chen, had a slight change in expression. He secretly exclaimed, "It's the Great Qin's envoy. The Black Dragon Guards. It's his Black Dragon Guards." The Great Qin's envoy? Yi Chen narrowed his eyes. He had heard from Wu Gaomin that the Great Qin's envoy seemed to have been looking for him. However, for some reason, he felt that there was a faint familiar aura in the black torrent. Rumble. As the black torrent approached, everyone could clearly see that it was a group of people in black armor. The armor was airtight, revealing only pairs of bloodthirsty and ferocious eyes. "Emperor, I think we should retreat," Wu Gaomin could not help but say. As the master of Zenith Heaven, the Great Qin dynasty naturally had a high status in Zenith Heaven. No one dared to provoke them. However, Yi Chen did not move at all. At the next moment, just as the steel torrent was about to collide with the two of them, it suddenly stopped. Its movements were neat and uniform. Within this group of thousands of people with astonishing, murderous aura, the most ferocious and monstrous murderous aura swept out. When everyone saw the figure clearly, they were shocked to discover that it was a young man in black armor. The young man's fierce eyes swept across everything, looking disdainful and domineering. Everyone's gazes landed on the young man. Their eyes were filled with shock, and even Wu Gaomin was no exception. Even though it was a young man, he still felt a trace of cold danger from him. One had to know that he was a Fifth Revolution martial saint. Yi Chen stared at the young man in black. His initially calm gaze was slightly stunned. Subsequently, a hint of shock and not knowing whether to laugh or cry surged on his face. End of this chapter. Chapter 1173. Why is that young man still blocking the way? He's the Great Qin's envoy, the Black Dragon King. That young man is in trouble. On both sides of the road, countless people pointed at Yi Chen in disgust. Many of them had pity and sympathy on their faces. Subsequently, everyone saw the young man in black with a monstrous, murderous aura walk toward Yi Chen and the young man. Wu Gaomin felt very uneasy. He only knew that the Great Qin's envoy, the Black Dragon King, was looking for Yi Chen, but he did not know why. Was it an enemy or a friend? He could not help but take a deep breath in as he thought to this point. He took a few steps forward and cupped his fists. Master Black Dragon King. However, the young man in black did not even look at him from the beginning until the end. He walked past him and eventually arrived before Yi Chen. The young man's slightly ferocious eyes met Yi Chen's calm gaze. At that moment, the atmosphere seemed a little cold. Wu Gaomin's heart sank. Just when he was about to speak, he saw the young man in black suddenly kneel before Yi Chun, causing the ground to shake violently. The young man looked at Yi Chun in a daze. His cold, emotionless eyes were moist at that moment. "Master." A slightly hoarse and excited voice slowly came out of his mouth. Everyone was so shocked that they couldn't react for a moment. "And Master?" Wu Gaomin was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. The Great Qin's envoy, the Black Dragon King, whom even the Emperor of Daluo had to respect, actually called Yi Chen his master? Yi Chen looked at the young man kneeling before him quietly. He took a good look at his slightly mature facial features and had mixed feelings. "Little guy, you've changed a lot. I almost couldn't recognize you." Under everyone's shocked gazes, he patted the young man's shoulder heavily with a gratified expression. "Not bad." The young man in black before him was Xiao He. He was the hatched product of the snake egg he had obtained from the divine dragon pool in Miaojiang on Earth. After the spiritual energy recovery on Earth, he let it enter the sky-roaming Dragon King's dragon transformation pool to absorb the WRM's secret treasure. It then transformed from a snake into a WIRM. Yi Chen named it Yi Demon. However, when they arrived at the ancient desolate realm, they encountered a spatial storm, causing Xiao He to be separated. Who would have thought that they would meet again here? The black-clothed youth's eyes were slightly moist, and his lips trembled as he said, "Master, Little Black has been searching for you with great difficulty." It was precisely his actions that shocked the others to the point they couldn't close their mouths, and it even caused the steel torrent to be stunned. The legend in their eyes, the Dark Dragon King who was as indifferent as a giant beast of war, was actually the servant of a youth. Wu Gaomin's thoughts were in a mess. Great Qin's Black Dragon Guard was Yi Chen's servant. So what was Yi Chen's relationship with Great Qin? "All right, don't disturb the others," Yi Chen said in between tears and laughter as he extended his arm to help her up. Xiao He stood up and nodded heavily. He turned around and resumed his previous cold temperament. "Black Dragon Guards, listen up. Escort my master into the embassy. Kill anyone who tries to stop us." Here, an earth-shattering sound suddenly exploded in the void. Then, thousands of black-armored figures separated from the group and walked at the very front with surging killing intent. The entire capital of the Daluo dynasty was instantly cleaned up. Following that, countless citizens of the capital saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. An army of iron-blooded ferocious beasts escorted a young man into the capital, and no one dared to stop them. Wu Gaomin did not dare to follow. He could only rush to Marshal St. Mountain and the palace. Clearly, he wanted to report this earth-shattering news. In the embassy, Yi Chun and Xiao He sat opposite each other in a heavily guarded room. "Master, when I was swept in the void and severely injured when I woke up, the first thing I thought of was to look for you guys." Xiao He spoke slowly and told him about his experience after he separated from Yi Chun. "However, because I was injured at that time, I couldn't move around much. Later on, I accidentally fell into the demon region." "Demon region?" Yi Chun was secretly surprised. As if sensing his confusion, Xiao He explained, "There are people in the ancient desolate realm. There are sea beasts and wild beasts. The demon region is where the wild beasts gather. It's located in the southern part of Zhongzhou." Yi Chen came to a realization and looked at him in surprise. How did you obtain such a cultivation base later on? He could already feel that Xiao He's cultivation base had skyrocketed, rising from golden core to mid-nascent soul. His strength was comparable to an ordinary martial saint. If he revealed his true form, even a 5-revolution martial saint would not be his match. At that time, because the Demon Lord's tomb fell into internal strife, I was chased and had no choice but to escape into the Demon Lord's tomb. I didn't expect to absorb the Demon Lord's blood essence by chance, causing my strength to skyrocket. He seemed to be sneering. The current Demon Emperor of the Demon Region covets the Demon Lord's blood essence in my body, but it's not convenient for him to forcefully attack me. He could only confirm me the Black Dragon King and secretly set up the Demon Clan's secret descent in my body. Demon Clan's secret descent. Yi Chen squinted as a cold gleam flashed through his eyes. Subsequently, he extended his hand and pointed between Xiao Hei's brows. He suddenly realized that there was a palm-sized loach in his body, eating his blood essence. What a demon emperor! Yi Chen sneered. His actions are equivalent to treating you as a long-term meal ticket. He wants to consume you completely over the years. At this point, killing intent surged in his eyes. Fortunately, you met me in advance. Otherwise, he would have succeeded. How did you become the envoy of the great Qin dynasty? Yi Chen asked again. I formed the Black Dragon Guards back then. My goal was to use their power to find Master. I'm meeting on the way. Xiao Hei recalled. Follow me back to the demon region. I don't know what method he used, but he actually persuaded the demon emperor to form an alliance with him. Then, led the forces of the southern region into the central state and started the 100 Empire War. At that time, I didn't want to interfere, but I heard that Master appeared in the Tianfeng Sea area and was severely injured by an Emperor's Throne powerhouse. He stared at Yi Chen with his scarlet eyes, and his lips were filled with coldness. At that time, I wanted to avenge Master. Coincidentally, Ying declared war on the great Yin Imperial Dynasty, so I led the Black Dragon Guards to take revenge on the great Yin Imperial Dynasty. Thank you. Yi Chen was moved. He reached out and patted his shoulder lightly. He said in a gratified manner, I'm very pleased with your growth. However, the great Yin Emperor Lord alone can't kill me. I'll settle the score with him in the future. By the way, Master. Xiao Hei nodded. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, I know where the Patriarch and Yi Wu Shuang are. P.S. Chapter 3 has been updated today. It's Valentine's Day. Spend it at home. Don't go out. End of this chapter. Chapter 1174. Yi Chen was stunned. Then, he narrowed his eyes. Do you know where the Patriarch and Wu Shuang are? Now that Xiao Hei had been found, apart from his daughter, Su Yuhan, and his parents, he was most worried about the Patriarch and Wu Shuang. He was not too worried about the Patriarch. After all, the Patriarch was a tribulation stage almighty in the cultivation world in his previous life. The person who could kill him had probably not been born yet. Instead, he was most worried about Wu Shuang. Wu Shuang was a human sword spirit. Although he was human, he was not as good as ordinary people and could easily be at a disadvantage. Among the overlords of the Eastern Wilderness, there's a special force called a Huang Kingdom. There are only women in this country, and not a single man. Xiao Hei nodded slowly and said, Even the Empress of a Huang Kingdom is an extraordinary woman. It's said that the way they reproduce is to land on an island and recruit men from all over the world to have sex with them on the island. Moreover, the descendants they give birth to are all women. Yi Chen was stunned at first. Then, shock appeared in his eyes. Don't tell me that the Patriarch is in this Huang Kingdom. That's right. Xiao Hei grinned and said in amusement, I don't know what method the Patriarch used to subdue the Empress of a Huang Kingdom, but the latter listened to him and was loyal to him. Yi Chen did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. However, he could accept it after thinking about the Patriarch's lustful nature. He could only say that the Patriarch was indeed the Patriarch. Master, after the news of you being injured spread, the Patriarch secretly came to the Tianfeng Sea area from the Eastern Wilderness and killed all the sons of the great Li Emperor, Shang Wudao. Xiao Hei continued. The Patriarch even took all of Shang Wudao's concubines. Shang Wudao couldn't defeat him, so he could only ask for reinforcements from the Great Qin dynasty. That was why the Patriarch escaped back to a Huang Kingdom. The corner of Yi Chen's lips twitched slightly. He had to admit that the Patriarch was really ruthless. Not only did he kill all his sons, he even made her a cuckold. Anyone would go crazy. He could not help but ask, what about Wu Shuang? Yi Wu Shuang's situation is a little more complicated. Xiao Hei's expression froze as he said, I heard that he joined the Sword Hut. After the news of your injury spread, he crossed the middle state to the Tianfeng Sea area and killed Shang Wudao until he fled. Sword Hut? Yi Chen frowned. It was the first time he had heard of this name. Xiao Hei shook his head slightly and said, The Sword Hut is a hidden power. It is said that there are only two people in the Sword Hut. One is the master, and the other is the disciple. Other than that, there is no third person. Most importantly, the The sword hut is a taboo in Zhongzhou. Rumor has it that the successors of the sword hut once caused a bloodbath in Zhongzhou. They single-handedly suppressed many large sects and were seen as heretics in the ancient barren world. Speaking of this, his gaze flickered. Thus, every time a successor of the sword hut is born, he will become the target of public criticism and be suppressed by the central province. The smile on Yi Chen's face faded slowly. His eyes looked grim. Who's Wu Shuang's master? I'm not sure. Little Black shook his head. No one has seen his teacher. They only know that he is the master of the sword hut. In reality, outsiders don't even know where the sword hut is. The master of the sword hut. Yi Chen secretly frowned as his eyes flickered nonstop. If he could not find the sword hut, how was he going to find Wu Shuang? By the way, master, Little Black said, when Wu Shuang came to the Tianfeng Sea area to hunt down the Emperor of Great Li, he lured the Emperor of Great Yin out. The Emperor of Great Yin tried to kill Wu Shuang, but at that time, there seemed to be an Emperor's throne powerhouse standing behind Wu Shuang. The other party intercepted the Emperor of Great Yin. As soon as that was said, even Yi Chen's expression changed. An Emperor's throne powerhouse? Could it be the master of the sword hut? Even though he had never fought with an Emperor's throne powerhouse before, he could still feel from his first battle with the Emperor of Great Yin, Emperor Xianku. An Emperor's throne powerhouse was probably equivalent to the soul formation stage in the cultivation world. It should be the master of the sword hut. Little Black nodded. However, Wu Shuang and that Emperor's throne powerhouse disappeared. I tried all kinds of methods, but I couldn't find any information. Yi Chen smiled helplessly. Even though there was an Emperor's throne powerhouse standing behind Wu Shuang, he was still worried. After all, Little Black had said that the sword hut was regarded as heretics by the central province. One Emperor's throne powerhouse might not be enough. Little Black seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, Master, where's Little Mistress? Yi Chen's eyes dimmed. Then he told him everything about how he had been separated from his daughter. Little Mistress is missing? Little Black's expression changed, and a viciousness that had been hidden from the depths of his eyes appeared again. I always thought that Master and Little Mistress were inseparable. I didn't expect this to happen. Before the incident, I handed her over to Mu Kai Wei. Therefore, my initial plan was to come to the Daluo dynasty to meet you, the Great Qin's envoy. Yi Chen shook his head and said, I didn't expect the Great Qin's envoy to be you. Now, many of my doubts have been resolved. I plan to return to the Tianfeng Sea area next. I hope there will be some gains. In reality, he was burning with anxiety. In such an uneasy environment, Mu Kai Wei did not have the ability to protect the little girl. Little Black grinned. His ferocious face was like a bloodthirsty beast. All right, I'll follow Master to the Tianfeng Sea area this time. It's time to settle the score with the Emperor of Great Li. Not long after, an extremely respectful voice came from outside. Master, the Emperor of Great Luo has been waiting outside for a long time. Master, you can meet the Emperor of Great Luo. If we want to return to the Tianfeng Sea area, we'll need to use the wormhole of the Great Luo. There's no need to go through so much trouble. He clenched his fists and said calmly, It's a piece of cake for me to tear through space and arrive at the Tianfeng Sea area now. However, if you want to bring the Black Dragon Guards with you, you should go through the wormhole. Outside the embassy, the current Emperor of Great Luo was dressed in plain clothes as he stood respectfully outside the door. Behind him stood many figures, and more than 10 of them faintly exuded a transcendent aura. Creak! The embassy door opened. Yi Chen and Little Black stepped out. Almost at that moment, the Emperor of Great Li was shocked. He hurriedly bowed. I'm the Emperor of Great Luo, Pei Qinglan. Greetings, Imperial Lord, Great Qin's envoy, Black Dragon King. Greetings, Imperial Lord, Great Qin's envoy, Black Dragon King. The people behind him knelt on the ground in unison. Without exception, their eyes were filled with respect. Little Black was used to this scene. He said coldly, Your Majesty, this is my master, Yi Chen. The Emperor of Great Li bowed even lower. Greetings, Imperial Lord Yi. Chapter 1175. An hour later, in the Daluo Palace. Yi Chun and Xiao He sat at the head of the table. All sorts of delicacies were placed in front of them, and there were dancers dancing gracefully. The Daluo Emperor, Pei Qinglan, sat on the dragon throne and led a group of ministers to toast Yi Chun. Although Yi Chun was not interested, he still responded with a smile on account of the former's enthusiasm. As if sensing his thoughts, Xiao He put down his wine glass and said calmly, "Your Majesty, the two of us have come today to ask for a favor." The Daluo Emperor instantly understood and clapped his hands. The dancers in front of everyone immediately retreated. The former then looked at Yi Chun with respect. "I wonder what Emperor Yi needs this humble king for." Yi Chun smiled lightly. "I'd like to borrow your Majesty's wormhole to go to the Tianfengxi area. Is that possible?" The Daluo Emperor was slightly stunned. Clearly, he did not expect Yi Chun's request to be so simple. He then frowned and said, "Of course. However, Emperor Yi might not know that the situation in the Tianfengxi area is a little complicated. Is there anything you need us for?" The flattery in his words was self-evident. Putting aside the fact that Yi Chun had helped him greatly before, Yi Chun was a genuine emperor's throne stage powerhouse. No dynasty would be willing to give up the opportunity to befriend an emperor's throne powerhouse. Yi Chun was about to decline when he heard Xiao He say, "If your Majesty really wants to, why don't you lend us a few people?" Yi Chun could not help but look at him. Xiao He said softly, "Master, since the emperor is willing to help, we might as well borrow a few fighters from him. It could be considered as helping us solve some trivial matters." "May I know who you want to borrow?" the Daluo Emperor said in a daze. A cunning look flashed through Xiao He's eyes. "I'll lend you half of the Daluo Martial Saint Mountain's power." The so-called Martial Saint Mountain was the residence that the Daluo dynasty had specially built for all the martial saints in the Daluo realm. It was also known as the Daluo First Mountain. On the Martial Saint Mountain, there were a total of more than 30 martial saints, and half was more than 10. The emperor revealed a troubled expression, and he seemed to be slightly hesitant. However, he gritted his teeth and said, "All right, so long as I'm able to help Emperor Yi, then I'll naturally do my best to assist you." As soon as he finished speaking, his gaze swept out and descended onto the violet-clothed old man, Wu Gaomin, and he said, "Senior Wu, you count the number of people and make a trip with Emperor Lord Yi." "Here." Wu Gaomin stood up and replied. This was a vast grassland, and the atmosphere was very tranquil. A few lone wolves could be vaguely seen drinking in the exposed shallows with their heads lowered. However, this tranquility was broken in the next moment. Lone Wolf, who had been drinking water with his head lowered, instantly fled in all directions, as if he had encountered something terrifying. The azure void began to distort. When the distortion reached its limit, it was as if a pair of invisible hands had torn a hole in the void. With the appearance of a huge gap, a monstrous killing intent immediately swept out from the gap. A skinny figure slowly walked out of the crack in the void. When his gaze landed on the scene beneath his feet, there were too many emotions in his eyes. "Tianfengxi area, I'm back again." Behind him, many figures walked out with Xiao He in the lead. Behind them was an army that seemed to be made of killing intent. The killing intent was so dense that it was like a brush that was splashing ink in the air. "Master, is this the Tianfengxi area?" Xiao He, who was dressed in black armor, raised his eyes and sized up the world. Wu Gaomin sighed. "I've been to the Tianfengxi area once, but it's been a long time. My memories have long since faded." There were 17 figures standing behind him, and the aura they emitted caused the space to tremble slightly. They were the 17 martial saints of the Daluo dynasty. With such power, even if Yi Chun did not attack, it was enough to sweep through the entire Tianfengxi area. Xiao He looked at Yi Chun in confusion. "Master, where are we going next?" "Naturally, we'll go to the King Mu Fort first." Yi Chun took a step forward and headed southeast according to his memory. Xiao He and the rest hurriedly followed. The group flew thousands of kilometers along the way, and all they saw were scenes of devastation or people fighting. Clearly, the Tianfengxi area had experienced a huge upheaval during Yi Chun's disappearance for a month. Someone's coming this way. Yi Chen suddenly looked ahead and stopped moving. He spread out his divine consciousness. He could sense that there was a group of people rushing over in a panic 5 kilometers away, and there was a large group of people chasing after them. There was even a voice that Yi Chen was familiar with. It was an old man in linen clothes with an extremely hunched back. It was the 9-Yang sword leader who had gone missing. People of the Kunwa Holy Land, you won't be able to escape. If you know what's good for you, land obediently and be bound. Perhaps I, the Emperor of Great Li, will spare your lives. There were 2 martial saints in front of the pursuers. One of them was dressed in black and had an extremely sinister expression. The Kunwa Holy Land would rather die than surrender. There was blood at the corner of the 9-Yang sword leader's mouth. Even though he was in a sorry state, he still held a long sword in his hand and retreated while fighting. You're courting death. The black-clothed old man's gaze turned cold. Then he joined forces with a martial saint beside him and charged over. Old 9-Yang will send you to meet the palace master of Tai Ching Palace right now. Rumble. Under the combined forces of the 2 Second Revolution martial saints, the 9-Yang sword leader, who was already injured, was even more injured. His right arm was sent flying and blood splattered into the sky. Sword leader. When the Kunwa Holy Land disciples behind saw this, their eyes could not help but crack open in grief. The 9-Yang sword leader's aura surged as he chose to burn his life force. Go. Go quickly. Preserve the last bloodline of the Kunwa Holy Land. At this moment, a faint voice suddenly came from the void. 9-Yang sword leader, how have you been? At the next moment, a skinny young man with long hair slowly appeared in the air. The young man looked at him calmly. It's you. The 9-Yang sword leader was stunned at first. When he saw Yi Chen's face clearly, disbelief filled his eyes. Sir, the 2 martial saints' expressions changed slightly. They looked at Yi Chen as if they were afraid. This is a matter of the Great Li dynasty. I hope you don't. They stopped abruptly before they could finish speaking. They saw more than 10 figures attacking Yi Chen from behind. The aura that each of the figures exuded was stronger than theirs. At that moment, intense shock surged in the eyes of the 2 black-robed old men, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Nearly 20 martial saints. Where did this come from? They were not the only ones. Even the 9-Yang sword leader and the rest were stunned. Yi Chen took a good look at the 2 black-robed old men and the people in Great Li attire behind them. His gaze turned cold. People of the Great Li dynasty? End of chapter. Chapter 1176. Hearing his unexpected words, Yi Zichen was stunned. A black-robed old man immediately took a deep breath in and cupped his fists. I'm Zhihua. May I know who you are? You don't even know me? Yi Chen interrupted him and said with a forced smile, Didn't Shang Wu Dao tell you guys that if it weren't for the Emperor's throne powerhouse, he would have died in my hands long ago? Zhihua was stunned at first when he heard that. Then, he widened his eyes and looked at Yi Chen carefully. His expression changed suddenly. It's you. He was not the only one. Even the expression of the black-robed old man beside him changed drastically. Extreme shock surged in his eyes. It was him. Didn't he die from an emperor's throne powerhouse's attack? It could be said that the battle between Yi Chen and the 6 martial saints a month ago had spread throughout the Tianfengxi area. Now that Yi Chen had come back to life, how could the 2 of them not be shocked? At that moment, Xiao He brought the Black Dragon Guard army over. He looked at Yi Chen inquiringly. Master, kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. Yi Chen said calmly. All right. Xiao He grinned and took a step forward. He suddenly charged at Zhihua and the other man. 2 noisy old dogs. Come and accept your death. Oh no, run. Zhihua and the other man's expressions changed. They actually split up in an extremely treacherous manner. Clearly, they wanted to escape. They're just 2 useless second transition martial saints. If we let you escape from under our noses, that would be the biggest joke in the world. Wu Gaoman chuckled and joined the battle. He and Xiao He attacked together, and Zhihua and the other man died on the spot. Too weak. Xiao He returned to Yi Chen's side and muttered. When this scene entered the eyes of everyone from the Kunwu holy ground, a tempestuous storm arose in their hearts. The two martial saints who had almost beheaded the heads of their Kunwa Holy Land were dealt with so easily. The 9 Yang sword leader's pupils constricted violently. He could clearly see that both Xiao He and Wu Gaomin were much stronger than him. If he was not mistaken, Xiao He seemed to have called Yi Chen master. He shook his head and did not dare to think further. He took a few steps forward and bowed to Yi Chen solemnly. "Thank you for saving me, fellow Yi." "It's nothing." Yi Chen shook his head lightly and looked at him in surprise. "Fellow Jiuyang, if I remember correctly, didn't you go missing? Previously, the people from your Kunwa Holy Land even said that I was the one who caused your disappearance." When the people of the Kunwu Holy Land heard this, their faces were filled with guilt. "Fellow Yi, you might not know this, but after you killed the Patriarch of the Spirit Ruins that day, I was shocked by your mystical ability. I gained something by chance and returned to the sect to enter seclusion." The 9-Sun sword head bitterly smiled and said, "I never expected that someone would use your name to invite me out that afternoon. They said that they wanted to discuss how to deal with the Spirit Ruins Paradise." At this point, he could not help but sneer. "When I went to attend the appointment, I was ambushed from behind and fainted. When I woke up, I realized that I had been imprisoned. All of this was caused by the Great Li Dynasty colluding with the people of the Central Plains. Then it must be the same for the Grand Purity Palace Master." Yi Chen nodded lightly. What the 9 Yang sword head said was not much different from what he had guessed. "Fellow Tai Ching has already fallen." The eyes of the sword head of Juyang were filled with hatred. "Tai Ching and I tried our best to escape, but we were hunted down by the Dali dynasty. Unfortunately, Tai Ching was not as lucky as I was to have been saved by Yi Futian. What are your plans for the future?" Yi Chen asked. The 9 Yang sword head sighed softly. "What other plans can I have? I just want to preserve a trace of the Kunwa Holy Land's bloodline, but the Great Li Dynasty refuses to let it go." At this point, he could not help but bow deeply to Yi Chen. "If fellow Yi doesn't mind, I'm willing to follow you." He knew very well that no matter how strong Yi Chen was, the dozen or so martial saints behind him were already a terrifying force. There would definitely be a way out if he followed him. "If you choose to follow me, you'll definitely face the Great Li Dynasty. Aren't you afraid?" Yi Chen smiled faintly. "Of course, I believe fellow Yi. Moreover, I can't wait to tear Shang Wu Dao into pieces." The 9 Yang sword head snorted coldly. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. "By the way, fellow Yi, I'm afraid you've come to settle the score with Shang Wu Dao this time, right?" "That's right." "Why?" Yi Chen said. The 9 Yang sword head took a deep breath in and said, "However, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed because Shang Wu Dao isn't in the Tianfengxi area. To be precise, other than the 2 people you killed earlier, there's not a single martial saint in the Tianfengxi area." "What? Shang Wu Dao isn't in the Tianfengxi area?" Xiao Hei's gaze turned cold. Could it be that this guy received the news in advance and knew that we were coming, so he ran away? The 9 Yang sword head shook his head and said no. In fact, just 3 days ago, the Great Li Dynasty sent all their forces to conquer the Eastern Wilderness. Conquer the Eastern Wilderness? Why? Yi Chen thought of something and asked immediately. "Fellow, you might not know." The 9 Yang sword head explained patiently. "In this month, the people of the Eastern Wilderness Ahuang Kingdom came to the Tianfengxi area and killed all of Shang Wu Dao's descendants. They also took Shang Wu Dao's women. After Shang Wu Dao completely pacified the Tianfengxi area, he joined forces with the great Yin Imperial Dynasty's prince and sent all his forces to the Eastern Wilderness to suppress the Ahuang Kingdom." Yi Chen and Xiao Hei could not help but look at each other subconsciously when they heard that. They were still talking about how the Patriarch of Hell was in the Ahuang Kingdom. It was also the Patriarch of Hell who killed Shang Wu Dao's son and cuckolded him. Who would have thought that Shang Wu Dao would run off to take revenge? Thinking to this point, Yi Chen said, "How powerful are they?" The 9 Yang sword head took a deep look at Wu Gaomin and the rest and said, "With the Great Li Dynasty's original strength, it naturally can't compare to them. However, after the people brought by the Emperor of the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty in Central State," he paused for a moment, and a hint of fear flashed in his eyes. It said that the emperor of the great Yin imperial dynasty is already a 9-revolution martial saint. Moreover, he has an emperor weapon bestowed by the emperor of the great Yin imperial dynasty. As his voice fell, the expressions of Wu Gaomin and the rest changed. The expressions of Wu Gaomin and the others also changed. Wu Gaomin sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Emperor, the great Yin imperial dynasty has a total of 9 princes, and whether it is in terms of talent or battle prowess, they are all unparalleled." He gulped and said, "If we add the emperor weapon bestowed by the emperor of the great Yin imperial dynasty, no one below the emperor's throne stage is a match for him." Xiao He could not help but look at Yi Qian when he heard that. "Master, if that's really the case, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with the patriarch's strength." On the other hand, the Nanyang swordhead looked at Yi Qian dumbfoundedly. His mind was buzzing. Emperor Yi, the emperor, other than the emperor's throne powerhouses. Who else could be called the emperor? P.S. Chapter 3 has been updated for today. End of this chapter. Chapter 1177. The Eastern Barren Territory was known as one of the 5 major regions of the ancient Barren world. It wasn't like the Tianfengxi region or the Northern region, where dynasties and sects were everywhere. There were 3 transcendent forces that guarded this world for generations. They were the mysterious ancient Shi family, the Saint Demon sect, and the Ahuang kingdom. These 3 forces divided the Eastern Barren Territory. The ancient Shi family rarely interacted with outsiders. The people of the Saint Demon sect cultivated demonic arts and acted lawlessly. As for the latter, the Ahuang kingdom was different from the other 3 forces. From the common people to the empress, the Ahuang kingdom was a country made up of women. They abided by the teachings of their ancestors and didn't allow men to enter the country. The Ahuang kingdom was built by the sea. Rumor had it that there was a mysterious island in the sea. Every year on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, the Ahuang kingdom would send the women to the island and then invite the men in the Eastern Barren Territory to enter the island to mate with them. Of course, this didn't mean that any man could enter the island. They had to be talented and handsome. Rumor had it that if a man and a woman liked each other on the island, they could find a quiet place to do it. Afterward, the man would leave of his own accord, treating it as a transaction and not to be entangled. When the women returned to the country, they would become pregnant. After giving birth, the babies would all be women. There were no exceptions. The women of the Ahuang kingdom would only choose one man in their lifetime, and only do it once. Since the men were all talented and handsome, the women of the Ahuang kingdom had inherited their genes. It could be said that all of them were as beautiful as flowers and were graceful and graceful. Every year on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, even disciples of the mysterious ancient Shi family and the Saint Demon sect wouldn't let go of this opportunity. It could be said that many of the people of the Ahuang kingdom were descendants of the Shi family and the Saint Demon sect. That was also why the Shi family and the Saint Devil sect would not deliberately target the Ahuang kingdom. The 3 parties maintained a relationship that was as close as fish and water. However, this balance was broken 3 days ago, causing the Ahuang kingdom to fall into internal and external troubles. The flames of war filled the Ahuang kingdom. It was no longer the country of women that outsiders envied. The huge light screen of the formation was like an upside-down bowl, covering the entire capital of the Ahuang kingdom. Countless valiant women stood on the city walls with swords in their hands, nervously looking out of the city walls. Over there, banners fluttered in the wind and surged with killing intent. Everywhere that met the eye was a dense mass of figures that covered the heavens and the earth, and a largely character was inscribed on every single banner. Dozens of figures with powerful auras stood on top of these figures. Although there were only dozens of them, the auras they emitted seemed to be even more intimidating than the army below. 3 days ago, the Emperor of Dali used all the power of the Dali dynasty in the name of revenge and crossed the border to attack a Huang kingdom from the Tianfengxi area. After 3 days of fierce attacks, the Ahuang kingdom suffered successive defeats. They had already retreated to the capital. It could be said that the capital was the last barrier. If they lost again, the Ahuang kingdom would not be far from destruction. Countless female soldiers of Ahuang kingdom, who were guarding the city, stared at the people in the distance with hatred. They would never forget that these people had killed their way into their country, destroyed their homes, and humiliated their compatriots. The entire capital of the Ahuang kingdom was immersed in the dark clouds of war. It seemed that any random move would set off a new round of bloodshed. In a hole deep in the capital, the atmosphere was as intense as a volcanic eruption. The female soldiers in red robes, who were responsible for guarding the palace and protecting the empress, stood with swords in their hands. They stared nervously at the female soldiers in white in front of them. The battle seemed to be on the verge of breaking out. At the top of the hall, on the dragon throne, sat a woman with a fairy-like face, wearing a brocade robe embroidered with a fiery red coiled dragon. The woman's hair flowed down like a dark spring, and as her hair danced in the wind, it stirred up layers of black, flowing light. She looked coldly at the figures below, like the golden coiled dragon on the brocade robe. It was as if it wanted to soar into the sky, and no one dared to look at it directly. Imperial advisor, how dare you betray me? If one looked closely, they would find that her face was slightly pale, and there was a faint black aura between her eyebrows. And she was the empress of the Ahuang kingdom, Jianglei. Betray. The person who responded to her was a woman in white clothes. She was no more than 16 years old, and she was as spotless as a fairy. Your Majesty, no, Jianglei, you betrayed my Ahuang kingdom first. Tell me clearly today, when did I betray the Ahuang kingdom? Jianglei raised her eyebrows with her hands behind her back. Her beauty made all the beauties pale in comparison. You're still being stubborn. The woman in white seemed to laugh mockingly and said, Fine. Today, in front of all the elders in the clan, I'll completely show you how licentious you are. Behind her stood several silver-haired old women. The old women were expressionless, and they faintly emitted a terrifying aura. They were the powerful elders of the Ahuang kingdom. They were formed after the previous empresses had retired. With a word, they could decide the identity of the heir of the Ahuang kingdom and change the world. The woman in white turned around and bowed to the silver-haired old women behind her. She said with a smile, Elders, may I ask if there's a rule in the Ahuang kingdom's ancestral teachings that prohibits men from entering the Ahuang kingdom? As soon as she said that, the expression of Jianglei, who was originally dignified on the dragon throne, changed slightly. A trace of panic flashed in her beautiful eyes. That's right. The silver-haired old woman in the middle who was leaning on a walking stick said slowly, The Ahuang kingdom does have such an ancestral teaching. Those who violate it will have their cultivation crippled and drowned in a pig cage. Wan Yinru, now that the Ahuang kingdom is facing a national crisis, why did you suddenly call us here? Another elder said with a look of displeasure. Elder, please calm down. The imperial tutor, Wan Yinru, smiled proudly. Then he said with a faint smile, because what I'm going to say next involves the ancestral teachings. The next moment, he suddenly turned around and pointed at Jianglei on the dragon throne. He shouted sternly, Our most respected empress, it's fine that you disobeyed the ancestral teachings and had an affair with a man. You even hit a man in the palace. As soon as he said that, everyone fell silent. Whether it was the silver-haired old women who were in high positions of power or the hundreds of female soldiers who were fighting each other, their expressions changed. At that moment, Jianglei's face became even paler. Her beautiful eyes revealed panic and despair. Pa, how dare you? With a loud sound, a silver-haired old man took a step forward and slapped Wan Yinru's face heavily. He said coldly, How dare you slander Her Majesty? Wan Yinru, do you have any sense of seniority in your eyes? Do you have the etiquette of a ruler and a subject? The slap landed. Even though Wan Yinru was a 5-revolution martial saint, she was still caught off guard and suffered a heavy slap. A trace of scarlet blood immediately flowed from the corner of her mouth. No. Wan Yinru ignored the pain on her face and suddenly roared hoarsely, No, I didn't slander her. I have witnesses. Chapter 1178. Witness. An elder stood up and said expressionlessly, "What witness?" Wan Yinru turned around and said, "Bring her in." Not long after, under everyone's gaze, two female soldiers escorted a young girl dressed in a palace maid's robe into the hall. The moment Jiang Lei saw the young lady, she closed her eyes with a slight heartache. That was her personal palace maid, Xiao Er. She was usually in charge of grooming her and was almost inseparable. As if sensing the change in Jiang Lei's expression, Wan Yinru's face regained its smug expression. "Elders, you all know Xiao Er, right?" The elders nodded slightly. After all, they were the ones who had chosen Xiao Er to enter the palace when she was young. Wan Yinru looked like she was watching a good show and said, "Xiao Er, tell us everything you know." Xiao was subconsciously raised her head to look at Jiang Lei. She bit her lips and said guiltily, "Your Majesty, I'm sorry." "What's there to be sorry about?" An elder shouted sternly. "Be *th. If you lie in front of all the elders today, I'll push you into the basin." The so-called basin was a form of torture used by a Huang kingdom to punish people who had committed the most heinous crimes. They would push people into a pit full of venomous snakes and be bitten to death or poisoned to death by countless venomous snakes. Xiao Er's face turned pale when she heard that. She immediately stammered, "I can testify that Her Majesty really hit a man in the palace." Her words caused the expressions of the clan elders to change. They could not help but subconsciously glance at Jiang Lei. "Elders, I used to be the one to protect Her Majesty. Even when Her Majesty was sleeping, I would stay in the palace." Xiao Er's lips trembled as she said, "However, Her Majesty removed all the palace maids from the palace. Since then, she has never allowed us to go near the palace." "Bastard, what does that mean?" Some elders were furious. Wan Yinru was expressionless. "Continue." Xiao Er lowered her head and clasped her fingers tightly. "Later, when I was grooming Her Majesty, I found a lipstick on her neck. At this point, she gritted her teeth. At that time, I thought that His Majesty was keeping a female pet in the palace, so I secretly sneaked into the palace. I didn't expect to hear. What did you hear? Hurry up and speak." A clan elder shouted. Xiao Er looked at her feet and shivered. "Then I heard Her Majesty talking to a man." As her voice fell, the entire hall was deathly silent. Everyone stared at Jiang Lei in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with shock. Since ancient times, a Huang kingdom had never allowed men to enter. But now, the empress in their hearts had even raised a man in the palace. Even the elders on Jiang Lei's side couldn't help but change their expressions. One of them took a deep breath and stared at Jiang Lei. "Your Majesty, is this true?" Under everyone's gaze, Jiang Lei clasped her hands tightly together on her thighs, but she still said without blushing or panting, "I didn't." She knew that once she admitted it, she would be completely finished. Not only would she lose all her prestige in the kingdom, but she would also be punished by the ancestral teachings. That was not the main point. She knew that once she admitted it, she would implicate Quan. "It seems that this lowly servant is lying." An elder was furious on the spot. He looked at Xiao Er and scolded, "Someone drag this lowly servant out and push her into the basin." As soon as he said that, Xiao Er instantly revealed a horrified expression. She couldn't help but look at Wan Yinru as if asking for help. "State Preceptor, save me, wait." Wan Yinru suddenly stopped her. The many elders looked very unhappy. "Wan Yinru, what else do you have to say?" Meeting their gazes, Wan Yinru was also a little flustered. She couldn't help but blurt out subconsciously, "Elders, if you want to prove whether Her Majesty has raised a man or not, you just need to look at her chastity mark." As soon as she finished speaking, Jiang Lei, who was sitting on the dragon throne, trembled as if all the energy in her body had been sucked out. The so-called chastity mark was a medicine that would be painted on a girl's wrist the moment she was born. This medicine would not disappear throughout the year, but once a girl and a man intercourse, it would immediately disappear without a trace. The elders looked at each other and nodded in unison. One of them looked up at Jiang Lei and said, "Your Majesty, forgive us for our rudeness. However, this matter involves too many people. In order to prove your innocence, we can only offend you." As he spoke, one of the elders walked towards Jianglei. Seeing this, the state preceptor, Wan Yinru, looked at Jianglei with a gloating gaze. On the dragon throne, Jianglei's body was extremely weak. Her eyes were filled with despair. She could only watch as the elders walked towards her. She knew, from the next second, she would be finished. At this moment, an extremely violent force suddenly appeared in the main hall. It then attacked the elder in an extremely domineering manner. The elder's expression immediately changed. Then, he unleashed all of his cultivation and slammed his palm against the force. Rumble, the entire main hall immediately rumbled. Puff! The elder took a few steps back. After stabilizing himself, he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. "Who is it?" At the same time, the other elders unleashed their auras as they looked around vigilantly. They were all above the third revolution Martial Saint rank, yet they were unable to withstand a single attack from the other party. How could they not be nervous? At that moment, a calm voice exploded. "Is the Ancestors woman someone you old fellows can touch?" The voice was like a clap of thunder. Soon after, it stirred up an extremely terrifying storm in the main hall, causing the entire hall to shake faintly. At the next moment, a young man in a black robe slowly walked in from outside the hall. Although the young man was handsome, there was a trace of unruly and unrestrained expression between his brows. Coupled with the deliberate tug of his beard, it added quite a bit of mature charm to him. Most importantly, the young man's eyes revealed a hint of dignity that made it impossible for others to look him in the eye. As he appeared, Jianglei, who was sitting on the throne, was shocked at first. Then, a hint of gentleness flashed through her beautiful eyes. At that moment, the elders in the main hall were all shocked. With murderous intent on their faces, they said, "Who are you?" "Elders, did you see that?" Wan Yinru pointed at the young man and laughed loudly. "A man. There really are men in our Huang Kingdom's palace. It turns out that I did not slander Jianglei." The elders' expressions became extremely gloomy when they heard this. The young man acted as if he did not see anyone present. He walked straight towards Jianglei, who was sitting on the throne. "Didn't I tell you not to come out?" Jianglei seemed to be rebuking him as she complained. However, she could not hide the smile at the corner of her lips. "P.S. My head hurts a little. I don't know if it's because of the first snow of the year last night. I can only write 2 chapters today. I'll try to write 4 chapters tomorrow." Chapter 1179. Didn't I tell you not to come out? When she said that, Jianglei seemed to have forgotten that there were elders present. Instead, she looked at the youth in black in front of her lovingly. "How can I bear to let my little beauty be bullied by others?" The youth in black laughed maniacally. Then, in front of everyone, he reached out and pulled Jianglei into his arms. "Bastard, brat, let go of Her Majesty." Seeing this scene, the few clan elders present were all enraged. Even the countless female guards standing at the side, who were arguing with each other, also glared at the former. That was the empress of their Huang nation. She was pure and holy. How could she be profaned by a man? "You." Feeling the youth's dishonest hand touch her buttocks, Jianglei's body went limp, and she almost collapsed to the ground. "Elders, everyone, did you see that?" Wan Yinru sneered. "Our most respected empress is actually flirting with a wild man in public." The elders' expressions were extremely ugly. If they weren't worried that Jianglei was in the youth in black's hands, they would have already killed him. At this moment, an old woman slowly walked out from among the elders. The old woman's facial features were somewhat similar to Jianglei's. She looked at Jianglei with a pained expression and said, "Lair, is the truth really, as Wan Yinru said?" Under everyone's gaze, Jianglei steadied herself and swept her gaze across everyone. She said with determination, "Mother, you're right. Aquan and I are truly in love." After saying that, she looked at the youth in black sweetly. The youth in black was satisfied and proud. As soon as she finished speaking, the expressions of everyone present changed again and again, and they practically did not dare to believe their ears. Her Majesty was actually having an affair with a man when she knew that there were ancestral teachings? Bastard, Jiang Lei, you've really disappointed us. Jiang Lei has gone against the ancestral teachings and is no longer qualified to continue being the empress of a Huang nation. I suggest that we take her down on the spot and punish her according to the ancestral teachings. The elders' voices were as loud as thunder. Faced with such a situation, Jiang Lei seemed to be much more relaxed. She accepted everything with a smile. In the end, Jiang Lei's mother stepped forward and looked at the youth in black. Who are you? Aren't you afraid of my Huang kingdom's revenge? Old fellas, listen up. The black-robed young man chuckled in disdain. My Dharma name is Patriarch Netherworld. I don't care what you want, but I'm going to take Jiang Lei away today. If you dare to stop me, I'll kill you. After saying that, he grabbed Jiang Lei's hand and swaggered out of the palace. Where do you think you're going? Leave your life behind. Boom! At that moment, Wan Yinru made the first move. Majestic and vigorous yuan qi fluctuations instantly erupted, turning into a dazzling chain that sped towards the old ancestor and Jiang Lei. She wanted to deal with Jiang Lei today, so how could she let Jiang Lei leave alive? Scram! Ancestor Nether Spring laughed coldly as he stretched out his hand, and then he suddenly grabbed at the origin energy chains that whistled over towards him. Boom! As his hand grabbed forward, the space around the terrifying yuan power condensed chains started to tremble. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were squeezing it until cracking sounds rang out. Break! As a muffled sound rang out from the old ancestor's mouth, the space distorted to the extreme. The terrifying yuan qi chains were forcefully broken by his hand. How can he be so strong? Wan Yinru's expression suddenly changed when she saw that her attack had been broken. She subconsciously controlled her body to retreat. Bitch, you still want to run? However, at that moment, a huge hand suddenly grabbed her, directly grabbing her, and she couldn't move at all. Dead silence. The scene was dead silent. At that moment, everyone present looked at the old ancestor Nether in shock, their eyes filled with disbelief. Even the clan elders were no exception. As a fifth revolution martial saint, Wan Yinru couldn't resist at all. One must know that Wan Yinru's strength was ranked in the top 10 in the entire Huang country. Who are you? Wan Yinru felt that her body was about to split apart when she was grabbed in midair. Pa! The old ancestor Nether Spring raised his hand and slapped her face. Bitch, you're the one who caused all of this today. His slap went down. Wan Yinru's face was almost deformed. Pa! The old ancestor slapped her again. I never hit women, but I'll beat up every ugly woman like you who likes to be a bitch. Wan Yinru's teeth fell, and she almost fainted. If Jiang Lei was known as the #1 beauty in the Huang country, then she, Wan Yinru, was the #2 beauty. However, the second beauty was called ugly by the old ancestor Nether Spring. Let go of Wan Yinru and Jiang Lei. Boom! Almost at that instant, the several clan elders present could no longer hold themselves back and attacked in unison. In the next moment, a powerful aura erupted. 6 extremely ferocious energy pillars whizzed out and ruthlessly bombarded the old ancestor Nether Spring. The old ancestor wants to leave. You want to stop me with just a few old women who are about to crawl into the ground. The old ancestor Nether Spring laughed wildly. Then, he stepped in the air and looked at the 6 people's attacks. He waved his sleeve, and a majestic spiritual origin surged out, forming an energy shield around him. Bang, bang. The 6 people's attacks landed on the energy shield, but they only made a few soft sounds before they dissipated completely, as if they were extinguished by water. Is that all you've got? The old ancestor Nether Spring smile was filled with undisguised contempt. It could be said that he was extremely arrogant, and his brows were filled with arrogance. His attitude caused the eyes of many women to shine, and they couldn't help but be moved. When the 6 clan elders saw that the 6 of them couldn't do anything to the other party, even when they joined forces, their faces were filled with disbelief. One must know that the 6 of them were all 5 Revolution Martial Saints. When they joined forces, even a 7 Revolution Martial Saint would die on the spot. However, the young man in front of them had easily dealt with it. Who exactly was this young man? Aquan's strength has improved again. Jiang Lei, who was next to the old ancestor Netherspring, moved her eyes slightly. It was obvious that she was also shocked by the old ancestor's battle strength. Don't be too complacent. At this moment, an elder's expression turned cold, and he said coldly, "Everyone, set up the 6 convergence formation." In the next moment, the 6 of them immediately took mysterious steps, and their surging spiritual origin energy turned into light pillars that shot out. Then, they formed a light formation that enveloped the 6 of them. At that moment, Jiang Lei and Wan Yinru's expressions changed drastically, as if they had recalled some memories sealed in their sea of consciousness. If you like Evil Dad in the City, please collect Evil Dad in the City. Chapter 1180. Rumble. Boundless fluctuations of origin energy frantically spread out from the huge light formation that enveloped the 6 clan elders. This was a formation cast by 6 5-revolution martial saints with their full strength. The fluctuations caused everyone present to feel incomparably fearful. Terrifying fluctuations of origin energy whizzed out from the light formation, but they did not dissipate. Instead, they landed on one of the clan elders. The clan elder's aura instantly skyrocketed. 5 revolution martial saint, 6 revolution martial saint, 7 revolution martial saint, 8 revolution martial saint. In an instant, that person's aura directly skyrocketed from 5 revolution martial saint to 8 revolution martial saint, while the auras of the other 5 clan elders became dispirited. At that moment, even the patriarch of Yellow Springs' frivolous gaze changed slightly, as if he felt the pressure. Aquan, be careful. This is the 6 convergence formation of our Huang kingdom. It's said that it was created by the founding empress. It's cast by 6 people, gathering all the power of the 5 people and transferring it to the 6th person, Jiang Lei, who was being dragged by the patriarch of Yellow Spring, said with a pale face. At that time, the founding empress of our Huang kingdom was already an emperor's throne expert. The Huang kingdom was founded 2,000 years ago, and the first empress had already reached the legendary emperor's throne realm. However, no one knew what she experienced that led to her death. This secret was only known to the empress and the clan elders. A formation created by an emperor's throne expert? The patriarch of Yellow Springs' expression turned grave. He had already figured out the system of the ancient desolate world and knew how great the gap between the emperor's throne realm and the martial saint realm was. Torrential energy surged endlessly within the 6th clan elder's body like a churning ocean. A dark and cold expression appeared on her aged face. Her eyes locked onto the patriarch of Yellow Spring. Then she sneered and suddenly formed a hand seal, spirit-suppressing seal. Bang! As her voice faded, frightening Yuan power gushed out like a torrent, rapidly transforming into a glowing seal in the air. Rumble! The huge light seal fell like a meteor, directly shattering the void and suppressing the patriarch of Yellow Spring. An all-out attack from an 8-revolution martial saint. You finally brought out your trump card. The old ancestor Yellow Spring sneered as he watched the enormous seal of light whistling over, and then he tossed Wan Yinru and Jiang Lei away. Back off! He shouted fiercely as he stretched out his hand. A ball of black flames suddenly surged out from his palm, and it seemed like a black flower that had bloomed from hell. As soon as the black flames appeared, the entire palace suddenly cooled down, as if the temperature had dropped by dozens of degrees. Yellow Spring's fire. As the old ancestor Yellow Spring shouted, the black flame in his hand turned into a black torrent in the shape of a dragon and collided with the huge light seal. At that moment, Patriarch Yellow Spring's face turned slightly pale. It seemed like he had consumed a lot of his quintessential origin energy to execute that attack. Boom, 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 boom. A deafening bang mixed with a violent wave swept out from the palace at that moment. As the black torrent in the shape of a dragon bombarded the huge light seal, the light seal instantly paused, and then cracks that could be seen with the naked eye appeared. In the end, with a cracking sound, it exploded. The formation that the 6 of them had executed was enough to make an 8-revolution martial saint die on the spot, but it was broken at that moment. Wah! The 6 elders were sent flying, smashing countless golden pillars. Their pale faces were filled with disbelief. 139 Chinese. The old ancestor Yellow Spring took a few steps back, and a trace of blood could not help but flow from the corner of his mouth. His face was so pale that there was not a single trace of blood. Both sides were injured. No one was able to gain an advantage, but in general, the old ancestor Yellow Spring was still more skilled. "Aquan, are you all right?" Zhang Lei cried out, and immediately walked over to support the old ancestor anxiously. "How could I be all right?" The old ancestor Yellow Spring stabilized his body and swept a disdainful glance at the 6 elders. "Is this all you 6 pieces of trash added together? Since you can't stop me, I'll leave with your empress." After saying that, he grabbed Zhang Lei's hand, turned around, and was about to walk out of the palace. However, in the next moment, the space in front of the 2 of them suddenly distorted. A black palm suddenly reached out from the distorted space and directly pushed the old ancestor Yellow Spring back. "Ha ha! If we let you escape, then wouldn't all of our preparations be for naught?" A faint laughter was heard. "Who are you?" The old ancestor Yellow Spring's eyes were cold. "Hee, you don't even know the Saint Devil Sect's old demon Hellion? Damn it!" In an instant, several figures walked out of the distorted space. The leader was wearing a dragon robe, and the other was dressed in black. As soon as the words were spoken, the expressions of Zhang Lei and the injured elders of a Huang nation changed. "It's you." The old ancestor Yellow Spring's gaze fell on the man in the dragon robe, and he sneered, "Son of a bitch, you're here to take revenge on me so soon?" The man in the dragon robe was the Dali dynasty's emperor, Shang Wudao. "You must die today." Shang Wudao stared at him and laughed out of extreme anger. When he thought about how the old ancestor had slaughtered all his children and even his most beloved woman, he wanted to tear the old ancestor Yellow Spring into 1,000 pieces. Faced with his ruthless words, the old ancestor Yellow Spring chuckled indifferently. "I have to say, your woman's figure is really good, bastard." Shang Wudao's eyes were filled with murderous intent. At this moment, an old man in black next to him stood out and smiled faintly. "Fellow Shang, why waste your breath on a person who's about to die?" The old man in black had white sideburns, and his brows were filled with arrogance. Most importantly, the energy wave coming from his body made the elders' expressions change. Zhang Lei looked at the old man in black and said word by word, "Saint Devil Sect's old demon Hellion." The 3 overlords of Eastern Wilderness were the Sure family, a Huang nation, and Saint Devil Sect. The old man in front of her was the peerless demon of Saint Devil Sect, Old Demon He. "You've finally come." Under everyone's gaze, the nation master of a Huang kingdom, Wan Yinru, covered her face and threw herself into the former's arms intimately. Feminine, Zhang Lei and all the elders were in disbelief. Who would have thought that the imperial preceptor of a Huang nation actually knew Old Demon Hellion of Saint Devil Sect, and they were so intimate with each other in public? Meeting everyone's gaze, Old Demon Hellion cackled. "Hee, I guess you must be very curious, right?" Old Demon Hellion walked straight to the injured elders and squatted down to look at them. "To tell you the truth, this old man has been preparing for this day for over 200 years. 200 years? One of the elders tried to stand up, but found that he was powerless. He could only glare at him angrily. "In other words, you were already involved with Wan Yinru 200 years ago? If you like Evildoer Daddy in the city, please collect Evildoer Daddy in the city." Chapter 1181. "That's right." Wan Yinru walked over and said proudly, 200 years ago, I went to a Huang island as soon as I became the state preceptor and fell in love with Hellion there. I know you old farts abided by the ancestral teachings and didn't let me bring a man back. I hate you." Her expression was ferocious. "So from that moment on, I made an agreement with Hellion that I would be his spy in a Huang kingdom. Be asterisk tisich, you be asterisk tisich. Many of the elders were furious. Jianglei stared at her and said coldly, "Wan Yinru, since you and I both fell in love with a man, why did you poison me and expose Ah Quan's existence?" "It's very simple." Wan Yinru smiled coldly. "Because I accidentally learned that the first founding empress of a Huang kingdom was an emperor's throne strong. After she died, she left behind a method to reach the emperor's throne, and Hellion needed it. And you are one of the keys to open the secret treasure of the founding empress." At this point, her expression was full of pride. "I knew that if I didn't pull you down from the throne and sow discord between you and the elders, it would be very difficult to deal with you." As soon as she finished speaking, the injured elders trembled violently, and regret appeared in their eyes. The founding empress of a Huang kingdom left behind a secret treasure. Jianglei's pretty face finally changed a little, and she was in disbelief. She knew that the founding empress of a Huang kingdom was an emperor's throne-strong practitioner, but she died later, but she didn't know that the former had left behind a secret treasure before she died. Very surprised, right? Wan Yinru smiled coldly. "In fact, I didn't know at first, but Hellion told me later. After I came back, I also secretly investigated, and it proved Helian's guess." She couldn't help but look up at the elders. "Elders, Wan Yinru was right. The secret treasure is under a Huang island." The so-called Huang Island was an island above the sea of a Huang kingdom. Every year on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, the single women of a Huang kingdom would step onto the island and have sex with the men they liked. As soon as she said this, the expressions of the elders changed. It was obvious that she had hit the nail on the head. They originally kept this matter as the biggest secret in their hearts, planning to pass it on to Jianglei in the future. They didn't expect Wan Yinru to know. "Traitor, Wan Yinru, you traitor!" The clan elders cursed and cursed. They wanted nothing more than to tear Wan Yinru into pieces. If Jianglei's affair with the Patriarch of Hell disappointed them, then Wan Yinru's collusion with the Saint Devil sect in an attempt to steal the Huang kingdom's treasures made them extremely resentful. "Why are you wasting your breath on these old women? Just kill him. We only want Jianglei anyway." Shang Wudao, the emperor of Dali dynasty, snorted coldly. "All right, we'll do as fellow Daoist Shang says." Old Devil Hellion laughed cruelly. Then, he walked toward the clan elders with a murderous aura. Wait! Right at this moment, Jianglei, who had been watching from the side, suddenly stopped them. Then, she quickly walked to the front of the clan elders and coldly stared at old Demon Hellion. "If you dare to kill them, then you can forget about getting the founding empress's secret treasure." "Stupid woman, what are you doing?" Without waiting for old Demon Hellion to speak, old ancestor Yellow Spring's figure flashed over. Obviously, he wanted old Demon Hellion not to intervene. To the old ancestor, the life and death of these clan elders had nothing to do with him. Moreover, the so-called secret treasure that everyone was talking about was not attractive to him. No matter how great the secret treasure was, it was merely left behind by an emperor's throne realm expert. What kind of great expert's tomb had he not seen in his previous life? The clan elders looked at Jianglei in disbelief, as if they did not expect that Jianglei would still protect them at this moment. Jianglei looked at old ancestor Yellow Spring as if asking for help. "Ah Quan, no matter what, there are still people in my Huang kingdom, and we are related by blood." As soon as she said that, the clan elders felt extremely guilty. "It's really touching." Old Demon Hellion smiled faintly and squinted at Jianglei. "Miss Jiang, don't forget that you can't even protect yourself, and you still want to save them? I only know that you don't dare to kill me. Otherwise, you can forget about getting the founding empress's secret treasure." Jianglei stared back at him. Slap! Old ancestor Yellow Spring slapped her, but heavily. "Stupid woman, with me here, who can touch you? You?" The greatly Emperor, Shang Wudao, smiled disdainfully. "I admit that you are stronger than me, but you are at most an 8-revolution martial saint. Fellow Hellion is an 8-revolution martial saint, and there are even a few 7-revolution martial saints. What do you have to fight against us?" "That's right. The Saint Devil Sex old demon Helene sneered. If you were at your peak, this old man might have some difficulty suppressing you. But when you fought with these old women just now, you were already injured. Then let's do it. Patriarch Yellow Spring stared coldly at them. His handsome face became a little twisted at this moment. Kill him. Old Devil Helene shouted and took the lead to attack Old Ancestor Yellow Spring. Monstrous devil chi gushed out of his body. Kill. At the same time, several 7th Revolution Martial Saints also unleashed their auras and charged forward. Clearly, they wanted to kill Patriarch Yellow Spring on the spot. Back off. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring flicked his sleeve and pushed Zhang Lei and the others back. Boom! With a sharp whistle, a black longsword shot out from Patriarch Yellow Spring's body. The black longsword was burning with black flames. Netherworld sword. It was the first time the Patriarch had revealed the magic treasure he had refined. Even Yi Chun had never seen it before. It meant that the pressure he was under was extraordinary. Die, Patriarch! In an instant, Patriarch Yellow Spring held the black longsword in his hand and slashed out a shadow-like sword chi at Old Demon Hellion. Old Demon Hellion's expression changed slightly. He seemed to have sensed the might of this sword and chose to dodge quickly. However, a 7th Revolution Martial Saint behind him was directly slashed in the chest by the sword. As his body split apart, the upper and lower parts were completely enveloped by the black flames. And then there was nothing left. What kind of flame is this? Seeing this scene, everyone's pupils constricted. Heavenly Demon Seal. With a flip of Old Demon Hellion's palm, black light condensed and turned into a huge black mark. Then he slapped out with his palm. Heaven and Earth Level 4, Slaughter Sword. Countless sword shadows suddenly appeared in Patriarch Yellow Spring's hand. The entire palace seemed like it could be sliced into countless pieces at any time. Boom! The huge palm print collided with the sword shadows that filled the sky. Terrifying energy fluctuations spread out, causing the entire palace to shake violently. Tap, tap, tap. Patriarch Yellow Spring retreated repeatedly. I've said before, you might be able to fight me at your peak. Unfortunately, you're no match for me in your current state. The black seal trembled, and Old Demon Hellion smiled disdainfully. If you like Evil Dad in the City, please collect Evil Dad in the City. Chapter 1182. Is that so? The Old Ancestor Yellow Spring's gaze was cold as he suddenly smiled. I forgot to tell you that my sword isn't that easy to receive. In the next moment, among the sword shadows that were dispersing in the void, a gray aura suddenly condensed silently. Like a small snake, it then shot toward Old Demon Hellion's head. The gray sword aura was too fast, and it was too close. By the time Old Demon Hellion noticed it, it was already too late. Arg! He screamed as his body fell heavily to the ground. His body even began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. His miserable screams sounded like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. Under everyone's gazes, his body directly withered into a pile of rotten flesh. Only his divine soul shot out from his body. This was the Old Ancestor's Slaughter Sword. The Gray Sword Aura was the Slaughter Sword Aura. Your divine soul belongs to the Old Ancestor. The Old Ancestor Yellow Spring took a step forward and directly grabbed at his divine soul. Crown Prince, save me. Save me. Old Demon Hellion's divine soul frantically roared. Rumble! Suddenly, a slender hand stretched out from the void and pointed at the Old Ancestor Yellow Spring's back. Get lost! The Old Ancestor Yellow Spring suddenly turned around and slashed out with his sword. A 3-meter-long sword aura whistled out, as if he wanted to cut down the huge hand. Bang! Gotcha! However, under the huge hand, his sword was directly broken, and the flying sword in his hand also shattered. Puff! The Old Ancestor Yellow Spring continuously vomited blood. He had long refined the flying sword, and now that it was damaged, his mind was also injured. In the next moment, under everyone's gazes, a figure slowly walked out from the distorted space. It was a young man wearing an embroidered robe. The moment he appeared, the entire palace seemed to have dimmed. An invisible pressure made most of the people present kneel. The old ancestor Yellow Spring forcefully resisted the pressure. A 9-revolution martial saint. He must be a 9-revolution martial saint. Even he was in such a state, let alone Jiang Lei and the others. All of them vomited blood and uncontrollably prostrated themselves on the ground. The youth in the official robe looked around expressionlessly. When he saw old Demon Hellion, who was only left with his divine soul, he couldn't help but say, "Trash! Boom!" Old Monster Holian's divine soul was immediately shattered. Everyone was so shocked that they couldn't say a word. He did not expect the other party to be so ruthless. When a young man in the official robe looked at old ancestor Yellow Spring, he could not help but be shocked. "You're able to resist my pressure. Greetings, Crown Prince." Taoist Shang Wu prostrated on the ground, trembling in fear. Too strong. One had to know that there was a 7th-cycle martial saint among them, but they did not even have the qualifications to stand in front of the other party. Only at this moment did they realize that the imperial prince was not someone they could imagine. The prince of Great Yin Jiucheng, Jiang Lei, was in despair. It was rumored that the Great Yin sovereign lord had a total of 9 princes. All 9 of them were the most outstanding geniuses in the entire ancient barren world. They had long reached the martial saint realm and were only one step away from the emperor's throne realm. "You're not bad." Yin Jiucheng looked at old ancestor Yellow Spring quietly. "If you're willing to submit to me, I can spare your life." "Who do you think you are?" Old ancestor Yellow Spring smirked coldly. "When I was dominating the universe, you were still a F** king single cell." Although he said that, the pressure in his heart multiplied. He was not the other party's match, even at his peak, let alone now that he was injured. Could it be that the patriarch had to abandon Jiang Lei and escape alone? At most, the patriarch would find a place to hide and cultivate until he reached the soul formation stage. Then, he would come back and take revenge on that brat. The patriarch was conflicted. He was confident that he could escape from Yin Jiucheng, but he could not bear to part with Jiang Lei. After all, he thought that Jiang Lei had treated him well. That was also the biggest difference between the patriarch and Yi Chun. The patriarch was a smart person. He would not force himself if he could not defeat him. As if sensing his conflict, Jiang Lei urged, Quan, run. Don't worry about me. Just remember to avenge me. Run." Imperial Prince Yin Jiucheng's body was bathed in light as he landed gently on the ground. He was like a god looking down on the world. "No one has ever escaped from my hands. No one. Not even a 9-revolution martial saint." He walked toward old ancestor Yellow Spring step by step. "I'm going to refine you into a puppet and make you one of my 10 war puppets. Damn it. If I'm still a demon, how dare a perfected nascent soul junior like you act cool in front of me?" Old ancestor Yellow Spring groaned internally. Shang Wudao gloated as he watched this scene. "I've said it before. You'll definitely die today. Give up resisting." Imperial Prince Yin Jiucheng stretched out his hand like the hand of fate. Just as the old ancestor Yellow Spring was about to fight with his life on the line, an explosion suddenly came from the void. "You want to touch me? I won't allow that." The voice seemed to have pierced through the restraints of space and resounded in everyone's ears. "Gotcha!" The hand that Yin Jiucheng had stretched out broke with a loud bang under this sound. Tap, tap, tap. The former only felt an unparalleled pressure, causing him to take a few steps back and spit a mouthful of blood. "Who is it?" At this moment, his expression was no longer as calm as before. Instead, it was replaced by deep shock. One had to know that when he descended, he had already sealed off this space. No one below the Emperor's throne could break through it. However, now, thinking to this point, his expression changed abruptly, and his eyes that were looking at the void were filled with shock. When the old ancestor Yellow Spring heard this voice, he was stunned at first. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and could not help but exclaim, "Fellow Yi, ha! Old ancestor, you're in a sorry state this time." As a hearty laughter sounded, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the space above everyone's heads. In an instant, A young man with long hair in a green robe slowly walked out of the crack and landed on the ground. Who else could it be but Yi Chun? At that moment, the smile on Shang Wudao's face, who was originally extremely smug, froze. Disbelief surged out of his eyes as if he had seen a ghost. The old ancestor Yellow Spring's body shook. He then walked over quickly and hugged Yi Chun tightly. He said while smiling, "How can you be any better? I heard that you were beaten to death some time ago." "I won't die even if you die." Yi Chun pushed him away. Only then did he realize that there was a faint trace of tears in his eyes. He seemed to be revealing his true feelings. In Jiuchong pretended to be calm and said, "Fellow." Yi Chun raised his hand and slapped him. Under everyone's horrified gazes, he directly slapped him to the ground. Yi Chun retracted his hand slowly and looked at him calmly. "Do you think you can call me fellow?" Chapter 1183. Slap. The crisp slap could be heard in the palace. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at In Jiuchong, who was slapped to the ground by Yi Chun. That was the prince of the great In dynasty. His father was an emperor's throne powerhouse. Putting aside his identity, he was also a 9-revolution martial saint in terms of strength. Whether it was talent or battle prowess, he was one of the best in the ancient desolate realm. This person is too powerful. I'm afraid he's an emperor's throne powerhouse. The few elders of the Ahuang kingdom who were sitting in the corner looked at each other, and deep shock flashed in their eyes. Even the patriarch of hell was no exception. He had fought In Jiuchong before, so he knew very well how powerful the former was. However, he was slapped to the ground by Yi Chun now. He seemed to have thought of something as he thought to this point. Disbelief surged in his eyes as he looked at Yi Chun. "Fellow Yi." Whoa. Yi Chun nodded lightly when he met his gaze. TSK. Patriarch Yellow Spring sucked in a cold breath. His heart was extremely shocked. Soul formation stage. Fellow Yi had actually stepped into soul formation stage. As a tribulation stage powerhouse in his previous life, he knew very well what kind of existence soul formation stage was. It could be said that countless talented geniuses were stuck at the perfected late-stage nascent soul stage, unable to take a step forward in their entire lives. Even the patriarch of hell had spent hundreds of years to step into soul formation stage. However, how long had he known Yi Chun? It had only been over a year. In just over a year, he had watched Yi Chun advance from spirit assembly to soul formation stage. "Fellow Yi, I'm convinced." The patriarch of hell clasped his fists at Yi Chun. "I'm convinced from the bottom of my heart this time." Greetings, Divine Lord Yi. In the cultivation world, foundation-building cultivators were masters, golden core cultivators were true lords, nascent soul cultivators were great cultivators, and soul formation cultivators were divine lords. It was a form of address and status. Perhaps the patriarch had a sense of superiority when facing Yi Chun because he was a tribulation stage powerhouse in his previous life. However, he had no choice but to admit defeat now. While the two of them were talking, Shang Wudao, the emperor of Great Li, was ashen as he muttered to himself, "How is this possible? How is this possible?" Yi Chun had withstood a blow from an emperor's throne fighter, which was shocking enough. Who would have thought that an existence as powerful as the imperial prince In Jiuchong was still no match for him? Senior. At that moment, imperial prince In Jiuchong stood up as well. He stared at Yi Chun with respect. "I wonder if an emperor's throne stage senior has arrived. If I've offended you in any way, please do it for my father's sake." His heart sank to rock bottom, and it was even to the extent that he was trembling. He'd completely lost the demeanor of an imperial prince. Not for any other reason, but because only an emperor's throne realm powerhouse could easily defeat him. It would have been better if Yi Chun had not mentioned Di Xianku. As soon as Di Xianku was mentioned, Yi Chun's gaze turned colder. He slapped him directly as if he was swatting a fly. "Kneel!" Suddenly, an invisible force came crashing down. In Jiuchong felt like he was being pressed down by an invisible hand and fell to his knees. "Senior, my father is the emperor of Great In, Emperor Xianren." In Jiuchong's face was filled with humiliation. When had he, In Jiuchong, ever been treated like this? Yi Chun did not answer at all. His hand continued to press down. Yin Jiucheng immediately felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. His head was stuck to the ground. Oh, he was crazy and unwilling. In the end, his entire body was stuck to the ground as if he was prostrating on the ground. No matter how he struggled, it was useless. Everyone was trembling with fear as they watched this scene. Was this the terror of an emperor's throne stage powerhouse? Written Chinese, I'll settle the score with you later. Yichen retracted his hand slowly. His gaze landed on Shang Wudao, the emperor of Great Li. He said with a faint smile, Shang Wudao, how have you been? Shang Wudao forced a smile and looked at Yi Chun with an extremely complicated expression. I just want to know, have you stepped into the emperor's throne stage now? Is it important? Yi Chun was expressionless. Yes, it's not important anymore. Shang Wudao took a deep breath in, and a wave of lethargy came from his body. As the saying goes, the winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. I have nothing to say now that I've fallen into your hands. He was the ruler of a dynasty after all. Naturally, he was not someone who was afraid of death and begged for mercy. Very well, I'll leave your corpse intact. Yichen nodded lightly and extended his hand to grab the former. Shang Wudao tried to resist, but he realized that he could not move at all. Blurg, Yichen reached out and broke his dantian directly. Why, you're so ruthless. Shang Wudao's face was filled with resentment. Yichen actually crippled his cultivation base. Yichen scoffed and pressed his palm on his head. He performed the soul-searching tactic forcefully. He wanted to know the whereabouts of Su Yuhan and his parents. Back then, Mu Kaiwei had said that after the ghost ship sailed into the Tianfeng Sea area, the Great Li dynasty had also participated in the operation to encircle the ghost ship. As the ruler of the Great Li dynasty, Shang Wudao definitely knew about it. The former's tragic voice rose and fell in the entire palace. It was as if he had experienced the cruelest punishment in the world, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Seeing this scene, the face of Imperial Prince Yin Jiucheng, who was suppressed on the ground, was filled with fear. Then he seemed to have thought of something and gritted his teeth. Rumble, at the critical moment, he chose to self-destruct. However, it was his body that self-destructed. The remaining soul was wrapped in a ray of green light. It broke through the void and entered the spatial rift. Oh no, fellow Yi, he escaped. The Patriarch of Hell was shocked. You think you can escape from my grasp? Yichen chuckled softly, as if he was disdainful. Then he stretched out his hand and spread his fingers. He reached into the spatial rift before it closed. A barely audible scream came from the void, followed by a deafening roar. Yichen retracted his hand at the right time. The Patriarch of Hell asked, How is it? I've destroyed his soul. Yichen frowned. He looked at the healing wound on his right index finger and said, he should be carrying a primordial spirit treasure. This primordial spirit treasure actually chose to self-destruct. Among the elders of a Huang kingdom, a silver-haired old woman cried out in surprise. That must be Di Xian Bing's emperor weapon. Although he said that, he looked at Yi Chun with more and more fear in his eyes. The self-destruction of the emperor weapon did not cause any serious damage to him. At that moment, Jiang Lei lifted her sleeves and took a few steps forward. She bowed to Yi Chun. I'm Jiang Lei. Greetings, Senior. Thank you for saving our lives, Senior. With that, she was about to kneel. Chapter 1184. Seeing that Yi Chen's expression did not look like he was faking it, Jiang Lei bowed and let it go. You can tell. The Patriarch of Hell looked at him in surprise. Yi Chen shook his head and said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, Before I came, I heard that you're enjoying yourself in a country of women. You're having fun with Her Majesty every night. You're so happy that you forget about home. The words having fun every night made Jiang Lei's pretty face burn. I'm no longer the Empress of a Huang kingdom. You know me best, kid. The Patriarch of Hell grinned and said, I didn't cry in vain when I heard that you were beaten to death. Yi Chan smiled warmly. Although he had not known the Patriarch for long, they trusted each other completely. He could not help but take another look at Jiang Lei and nodded to himself. He had to admit that Jiang Lei was extremely beautiful both in appearance and temperament. It was no wonder that the patriarch liked her. Thinking to this point, he waved his sleeve, and several bottles of medicinal pills fell into Jiang Lei and the patriarch's hands. Take them to recover from your injuries and detoxify. I won't stand on ceremony with you. The patriarch of hell chuckled. He sat cross-legged and consumed it after receiving it. He healed his injuries in front of Yi-chan. After the poison in Jiang Lei's body was removed and her cultivation base recovered, the elders looked at each other and knelt before her. Your Majesty, we beg you to continue being the Empress. However, Jiang Lei shook her head and said, Elders, I know that I've violated the ancestral teachings. I'm no longer fit to be the Empress. If your Majesty doesn't agree, we'll kill ourselves in front of you. The elders knelt and refused to get up. Their expressions were extremely firm. This time, they had really seen through it. If Jiang Lei had not risked her life to protect them earlier, they would have died long ago. Moreover, they could tell that the Patriarch of Hell knew an Emperor's throne powerhouse like Yi-chan. If they were to befriend him, it would only benefit a Huang kingdom. Seeing that Jiang Lei still wanted to refuse, the Patriarch of Hell curled his lips and said, Since they're threatening to kill themselves, you can continue being the Empress. Jiang Lei nodded and said, Elders, our top priority now is to repel the enemy forces outside the city. As soon as she finished speaking, a female official rushed in from outside with an incomparably interesting expression on her face. Seeing who it was, Jiang Lei and the other elders' hearts sank. What's wrong? Is the enemy attacking the city? This time, the Dali dynasty has sent out millions of soldiers. With the addition of the disciples of the Saint Devil sect, the total number of soldiers is over 2 million. If they attack the city, the female officer beamed with joy and said, Your Majesty, elders, good news, great news, the enemy has been defeated. Yi-chan could not help but nod in satisfaction after she told him everything that happened. It turned out that Xiaohe had brought his black dragon guards and over 10 martial sages of the Daluo dynasty to the eastern wilderness. Seeing that the enemy had surrounded the city, he had surrounded it from the back without saying anything. Together with the army of the Huang kingdom, they had annihilated the enemy. Xiaohe's black dragon guards numbered more than 5,000, and they were all demonic beasts that had cultivated successfully. The lowest cultivation base was at the pseudo-emperor stage, so they were the most suitable to deal with a group of ordinary people. Speak of the devil. Xiaohe, dressed in black armor, strode into the palace with a murderous aura. The enemy forces outside the city have been defeated. His monstrous, murderous aura caused the expressions of Jiang Lei and the rest to change. Well done. Yi-chan nodded while smiling. Reed, the Patriarch of Hell, looked at him carefully and suddenly said, Your second brother? Xiaohe's expression froze, and he was unwilling to talk to him. If Yi-chan was the person he feared the most, then the Patriarch was the second most. He would never forget the experience of being tricked by the Patriarch to lick the electric socket with his tongue before he could transform. Second brother. It's really second brother. The Patriarch of Hell walked over and circled around him. In the end, he clicked his tongue in wonder. You've changed too much, kid. I almost didn't recognize you. In less than half a day, the entire Huang kingdom went from despair to excitement with Yi-chan's arrival. Therefore, Yi-chan's reputation in a Huang kingdom soared. At that moment, countless women fell in love with Yi-chan. After this incident, the few elders discussed and decided to abolish the ancestral rule that a Huang kingdom was not allowed to accept men. In other words, from today onwards, the women of a Huang kingdom could communicate with men from the outside world. Once this change was announced, the entire kingdom was shaken. Even the entire eastern wilderness was shaken. As night fell, in the guest room of a Huang kingdom, Yi-chan chased away the dozen or so beautiful women that Jiang Lei had specially arranged for him. He closed the door and sat down to look at Xiaohe and the Patriarch of Hell before him. TSK, fellow Yi, the dozen or so women that Jiang Lei arranged for you are all elites of a Huang kingdom. Moreover, They're all virgins. There are even a few pairs of twins among them. You actually don't like them? The Patriarch of Hell shook his head and said, It's not that I want to criticize you, but you're too pure and have few desires. We cultivators are already going against the heavens. Why do we have to abandon our emotions and desires? Immortal cultivation, immortal cultivation. In the Patriarch's opinion, it's not a tiresome cultivation. We're just cultivating to do whatever we want. He pointed at Yi Chun. Look at me. I used to have a harem of 3,000, but they didn't mind at all. They even loved me to death. The corner of Yi Chun's lips twitched slightly. He really could not refute his scumbag theory. The Patriarch of Hell could not help but look at Xiao He. Second brother, don't be like fellow Yi. Tell me, which woman do you like? I'll arrange a few for you. Xiao He looked at him with disdain. There are so many beautiful women in this world. In a Huang kingdom alone, there are tens of millions of single women. Even if you sleep with one every day, you'll sleep for decades. What's the difference between you and a pig? Are you trying to go to heaven? The Patriarch of Hell was furious. Enough. Yi Chun interrupted their argument and said with a frown, It's time to discuss what we're going to do next. The two of them stopped on the spot. Yi Chun nodded in satisfaction and glanced at the Patriarch. What do you plan to do next, Patriarch? I don't have any plans. The Patriarch of Hell said, You know what kind of person I am. I just want to stay in this gentle place. However, I heard that the founding empress of a Huang kingdom was once an emperor's throne powerhouse who was suspected to be on the soul formation stage. She even left behind a secret treasure. He said seriously, What you mean is that I plan to stay for the time being and find this secret treasure. I want to see if there's a chance for you to step into the soul formation stage. Just when Yi Chun was about to speak, he heard him say again, The Patriarch is currently only at the intermediate stage, nascent soul stage. Fellow Yi, your enemies are getting stronger and stronger. I won't be able to help you much even if I follow you now. If you like Evil Dad in the City, please collect Evil Dad in the City. Chapter 1185. So, you and second brother should leave first. The Patriarch said in one breath, If you know the whereabouts of your wife and parents, just send someone to a Huang kingdom to inform me. I'll accompany you to conquer the entire ancient desolate realm. Yi Chun nodded slightly. In reality, the Patriarch was right. The Patriarch would not be of much help if he followed him now. It was better to give him some time to increase his cultivation. Thinking to this point, he narrowed his eyes and said, Sure. I also want to tell the two of you something. It's about my daughter, Yuhan, and the rest. You found out about it from Shang Wudao's soul search? The Patriarch of Hell was not surprised at all. Yi Chun nodded. That's right. Through the soul search, I found out that my daughter and Mu Kaiwei were taken away by an envoy from the Jade Lake Sacred Land. Jade Lake Sacred Land? The Patriarch of Hell was confused. He was in the eastern wilderness and knew almost nothing about Zhongzhou. On the other hand, Xiao Hei's eyes narrowed as he said, Master, according to what I know, the Jade Lake Sacred Land is located in the northern region of Zhongzhou. It's a supreme sect in the ancient desolate realm. It's said that they originated from the Queen Mother of the West, and most of their disciples are women. In other words, everyone in the Jade Lake Sacred Land is female. The Patriarch of Hell's eyes lit up. That's right. Xiao Hei nodded and said, Rumor has it that the Jade Lake Sacred Land has an Emperor's Throne powerhouse and countless martial saint elders. Whether it's their background or status, they're not weaker than the great Yin Imperial dynasty. An Emperor's Throne powerhouse. The Patriarch of Hell was extremely disappointed. He clicked his tongue in fear. Fellow Yi, if you want to go to the Jade Lake Sacred Land to pick up Meng Meng, you have to be careful. The forces in the ancient desolate realm are very complicated. What about the Radiant Saint Hall? Yi Chun asked again. He learned from Shang Wudao's mind that Mu Kaiwei and Meng Meng had gone to the Jade Lake Sacred Land. As for Jiao, she was taken away by the Radiant Saint Hall's envoy. Xiao Hei shook his head. I'm not sure about that. Yi Chun's eyes flickered nonstop as he said with a sneer, Meng Meng is my daughter. As her father, it's only right for me to take her away. It's fine if they're reasonable, but if they're unreasonable, I don't mind destroying the Jade Lake Holy Land. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed fiercely. Master, What's the situation with Madam and the rest now? This is the second thing I want to say. Yi-chan squinted slightly. I suspect that the Great Yin dynasty knows where Yuhan and my parents are. After searching Shang Wudao's soul, he learned that after the ghost ship sailed into the Tianfeng Sea area, many forces in the Central Plains sent out experts to besiege the crazy Taoist. Among them, a 9-revolution martial saint and even an Emperor's Throne powerhouse were mobilized. In the end, the crazy Taoist was defeated. Everyone on the ghost ship was captured, including Su Yuhan, his parents, and the little girl, Qianqian. However, Shang Wudao had no memory of the details of how they were captured. He had never been present at the time, or perhaps he was not qualified to be on the same stage as those big shots. The only thing he knew was that Su Yuhan, Yi Chen's parents, the crazy Taoist, and Qianqian were taken away by the three forces. Among them, Yi Chen's parents seemed to have been taken away by the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty. The crazy Taoist and Qianqian were taken away by a second force, and Su Yuhan was taken away by a third force alone. However, Shang Wudao had no recollection of the information about the second and third forces. The Great Yin Imperial Dynasty? The Patriarch of Hell's eyes focused, and he said in a deep voice, "Fellow Yi, according to what you said, it seems like the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty is the only breakthrough point. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." Xiao He smirked coldly. "Master, it was the Great Yin Imperial Emperor, Xianku, who ambushed you earlier. Now, they're related to the whereabouts of Master and Madam He. It seems like we're definitely going to fight the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty." Yi-chan said calmly, "Therefore, my current idea is to go to the Jade Lake Sacred Land to retrieve my daughter first. Then I'll settle the old and new grudges with the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty. Whether it's the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty or the Jade Lake Sacred Land, they both have Emperor's Throne powerhouses." The Patriarch of Hell hesitated and said, "Fellow Yi, you have to be careful. After all, you're the only one who has stepped into the soul formation stage. It's very likely that you'll be attacked from both sides. If Ying is willing to join forces with Master, it might not be so troublesome." Xiao He said, "After all, Ying is also an Emperor's Throne powerhouse. Moreover, he has formed an alliance with many great sects and knows other Emperor's Throne powerhouses." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and added, "There's also Wu Shuang. There's also an Emperor's Throne powerhouse behind him, the Master of the Sword Hut. If we can find Wu Shuang, there's also an Emperor's Throne powerhouse behind you, Wu Shuang." The Patriarch of Hell was surprised. Xiao He immediately told him everything he knew about Yi Wu Shuang. The Patriarch of Hell could not help but say, "If it's really as you said, and the Sword Hut is elusive, then it'll be very difficult to find Yi Wu Shuang." "Not necessarily." Yi-chan smiled lightly. "Indeed, we don't know where Wu Shuang is, but we can let him know where we are." Xiao He was stunned at first. Then he came to a realization and said, "Master, are you saying that we should get Yi Wu Shuang to look for us?" "That's right." Yi-chan nodded lightly and said, "Of course, things haven't reached that stage yet. Whether it's the Emperor's Throne powerhouse from the Jade Lake Sacred Land or the Great Yin's Emperor Xianku, I'm not afraid at all." He was not bragging at all. Once he stepped into the God transformation stage, he would have many techniques that he could use. He would not be like before. "All right, let's do as you say." The Patriarch of Hell finally finalized the plan. "Fellow Yi, go and pick up Ming Ming. I'll continue to stay in Huang Kingdom. Once I break through, I'll look for you guys immediately." Yi-chan nodded lightly. The Great Yin Imperial Dynasty was related to his parents' whereabouts. He had a feeling that the Great Yin Imperial Dynasty would be the best breakthrough point. Perhaps he could even find out Su Yuhan's whereabouts. The night passed uneventfully. At dawn the next day, Yi-chan returned to the Tianfeng Sea area with Xiao He. 10,000 meters in the sky, Yi-chan headed straight for the Great Li Dynasty with Xiao He. When they passed by the King Mu Fort, Xiao He said, "Master, the King Mu Fort is below us. Should we go down and take a look?" Before Yi-chan went to Eastern Wilderness, he forcefully tore open a spatial rift and arrived there. Xiao He first went to the King Mu fort according to his orders before rushing to Eastern Wilderness through the Great Li Dynasty's teleportation formation. There's no need. It's not that important whether we meet or not. Through his divine consciousness, he could already sense that the current situation of the King Mu fort was rather good. Since that was the case, there was naturally no need to go down and meet them. The group rushed to Zhongzhou through the Great Li Dynasty's teleportation formation. Then, they parted ways with the dozen or so martial saints that Xiao He had borrowed from the Daoyuo dynasty. Yi Chun led Xiao He straight to the northern region of Zhongzhou. Chapter 1186. Yi Chun and Xiao He were travel-worn. In order to increase its speed, Blackie revealed its true form. It was a black flood dragon that was over 60 feet long. Coupled with its ferocious aura, it caused the expressions of many people along the way to change. Half a day later, the two of them saw the nearest city in the distance. Transforming into human form, Xiao He gazed at the city in the distance. Master, Dust Province is right below us. The Central Plains was so vast that it was incomparable to the Eastern Barren Territory and the Northern region. No one knew how big the Central Plains was. They only knew that mortals couldn't cover all of it in their lifetime. Just the northern region alone had 13 states. Yichen stood in the clouds and looked into the distance at the endless city. His eyes flickered as he said, "You said that the Jade Lake Sacred Land is in Qi State, one of the 13 states, right?" "That's right. Apart from the Qi Prefecture, the other 12 prefectures of the northern region all have teleportation portals that lead to the Qi Prefecture." Xiao He nodded. "Qi Province is still a long way from here, so there's no need for us to cross several provinces. We might as well teleport from Dust Province to Qi Province." "That's not bad. Let's go down." Yichen nodded lightly. He waved his sleeve and was about to descend with the wind while carrying Xiao He. At that moment, he seemed to sense something and looked at a certain spot on the ground. Outside Dusk City, in the Blackwater River. "Am I going to die? Who would have thought that I, Hu Fei, who thought my heart was higher than the heavens and was considered a genius in the clan, would die in the hands of a woman today?" In the river, a simple and honest young man with a huge rock tied to his body was sinking into the water at an extremely fast speed. Feeling the increasing pressure in the water, to the point that his eardrums were on the verge of bursting, the young man smiled bitterly. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and hatred. Hua, hua, hua. His eardrums ruptured and blood flowed into the water. At this moment, a huge black shadow attacked from the water. It was like a huge black beast that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It seemed to have been lured over by the smell of blood. Rank 7 bloodthirsty beast. Seeing this, Hu Fei fell into complete despair. "Qiu Yun, you slut! Not only did you seal my cultivation, you even sprinkled demon luring powder on me and drowned me in the river. Even if I become a ghost, I will not let you go." The shadow was getting closer and closer, and his consciousness was getting weaker and weaker. Roar! The black shadow smelled the scent of blood and approached from afar. Then it opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the former. Its ferocious fangs were suffocating. Just as its mouth was about to swallow Hu Fei, a large hand suddenly descended from the river and directly crushed it. An endless amount of blood spread out. On the surface of the river, Hu Fei shuddered and woke up from his coma. He saw that not only was he not dead, he had regained his mobility and was standing on a cliff. Xiao He, who was standing aside, pouted and said to Yi Chun, "Master, he's awake." Hu Fei only noticed Xiao He and Yi Chun after hearing that. He bowed at them immediately. "Thank you for saving my life." He wasn't a stupid person. He knew very well that unless someone saved him, he would definitely die in that situation. Little Black chuckled as if he was being unreasonable. "I didn't save you. The one who saved you was my master." Hu Fei lifted his head to look at Yi Chun by instinct. He saw a white-haired young man meditating with his legs crossed. Just when he was about to speak, he saw the young man suddenly open his eyes and look at him quietly with an extremely cold gaze. At that moment, Hu Fei seemed to have been frozen. He stood still as a buzzing sound rang in his head. It was a pair of indescribable eyes. They seemed to contain the laws of heaven and earth, as if they could see through heaven and earth with a single glance. Under the gaze of this pair of eyes, Hu Fei felt as if all the blood in his body was burning. Even his soul felt an incomparably scorching sensation. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang, bang. Hu Fei felt like his heart could not take it anymore. Hu Fei snapped back to his senses from the nightmare after Yi Chun looked away. He was extremely exhausted and drenched all over. Hu Fei took a deep breath in. His body was shaking as he bowed to Yi Chun solemnly with a pale face. "Thank you for saving my life, Senior." "That's terrifying." He was still in shock. One had to know that he was not even 25 years old yet, but his cultivation base was already at peak martial ancestor stage. He was only one step away from entering martial saint stage. Chindu Chinese network with such talent, he would be the top among the younger generation in the clan. Those who were stronger than him were only a handful of fingers. However, he could not withstand Yi Chen's glare. Plop! In the next moment, he dropped to his knees and prostrated himself in an extremely pious manner. "Hu Fei of Dust Province's Hu Clan greets Senior. This junior will never forget your kindness in saving my life. I will definitely avenge you." This kind of kneeling posture was something that only Hu Fei, had ever done after seeing the Hu clan's patriarch for the first time. However, to Hu Fei, Yi Chun was even more terrifying than the patriarch of the Hu family at that moment. The reason being, he had never felt such a terrifying gaze from the patriarch earlier. "Get up." Yi Chun spoke slowly with a calm gaze. "I only saved you on a whim. There's no need for you to repay me. All right, you can leave now." The reason why he saved Hu Fei was not because he wanted to meddle in other people's business, but because he felt that Hu Fei's experience was somewhat similar to his, so he could not help but save him. After all, he had also been drowned in the river. He could feel the fear of death, and he could also feel his own unwillingness from Hu Fei. Hu Fei struggled when he heard Yi Chen's order to chase him away. He seemed to be unwilling. Then, he gritted his teeth and prostrated himself on the ground again. "Senior, I'm a youngest disciple of Dust Province's Hu family. My cultivation base is at peak martial ancestor stage. I beg you to submit to me, Senior." He said it in an extremely fanatical tone. He was almost certain that the young man before him was much more powerful than the patriarch of the Hu family. He had been harmed by a traitor in his clan. If he wanted a chance to take revenge, he would only have a chance by submitting to a powerhouse. And Yi Chun was the best choice. If the people of Dust Province or the Hu family saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked, speechless. One had to know that Hu Fei was known as one of the 4 geniuses in the Hu family. He was only one step away from becoming a martial saint at such a young age. He was also proud and unruly. Now, he actually admired someone so much. "You want to submit to me?" Yi Chun was surprised. Hu Fei immediately said respectfully, "Yes, Senior. This junior's cultivation base is low, and I know that I'm not qualified to submit to you. However, this junior is sincere. This junior has some status in the Hu family. If Senior has any requests, this junior will definitely do his best." Yi Chun shook his head lightly. Xiaohei grinned and revealed a murderous aura. "My master asked you to leave. Don't you understand?" Hu Fei's heart sank. Then he slapped his glabella and forcefully extracted his soul power. He offered it respectfully. "Senior, please give this junior a chance. This junior swears that I will never betray you. In order to prove my sincerity, this junior is willing to offer the power of my soul. This junior grew up in Dust Province since I was young." Hu Fei said subconsciously. "Very good." Yi Chun took his soul power and swallowed it. He fused it into his own soul, which meant that he could control his life and death. Seeing that, Hu Fei did not regret it at all. Instead, he revealed an incomparable fervor and excitement. "Thank you for giving me this chance, my lord." Yi Chun went straight to the point. "Do you know about the Jade Lake Sacred Land?" "The Jade Lake Sacred Land?" Hu Fei was stunned at first. Then he said, "My lord, the Jade Lake Sacred Land is one of the supreme sects in the northern region. It's located in Qi Province, one of the 13 states in the northern region." He slowly told Yi Chun everything he knew and added, "My lord, are you going to the Jade Lake Convention?" Jade Lake Convention? Yi Chun and Xiao He looked at each other. It was the first time they had heard of this. As if sensing their doubts, Hu Fei immediately said, "My lord, the Jade Lake Convention is organized by the Jade Lake Sacred Land. It's held every 100 years, and a new saintess will be appointed every time. The Jade Lake Convention will be held in 3 days." Through his explanation, Yi Chun came to a realization. It turned out that the Jade Lake Sacred Land had a saint and a saintess. In the Jade Lake Sacred Land, their status was second only to the Holy Lord. Even the elders did not dare to order them. According to the rules of the Jade Lake Sacred Land, the saint and saintess would be changed every 100 years. When they changed, the Jade Lake Convention would be held, and everyone in the world would be invited to witness it. Hu Fei seemed to have thought of something and said, "By the way, my lord, I heard that the Jade Lake Sacred Land brought back a woman from the outside world." Chapter 1187. Yi Chen's eyes lit up when he said that. Mu? Could be Mu Kai Wei? Thinking to this point, he immediately said, "Then how do we get to the Jade Lake Sacred Land from Dust Province?" Hu Fei immediately looked troubled. "My lord, logically speaking, Dust Province has a teleportation formation to Qi Province, but we need an invitation. Otherwise, we can only get to Qi Province and not the Jade Lake Sacred Land." "What invitation?" Yi Chun frowned. Hu Fei explained, "The invitation is distributed by the Jade Lake Sacred Land to all the forces. Only those with the invitation can participate in the Jade Lake meeting. My Hu family is also invited." Yi Chun was speechless when he heard that. "My lord, if you don't have an invitation, this subordinate has another way." Hu Fei said sensibly, "There will be an alchemy conference in Dust Province today. It's organized by the Alchemy Guild. If you get first place in the alchemy competition, you'll get an invitation." "That's great." Yi Chun nodded lightly and said, "Since that's the case, I'll go take a look at this so-called alchemy conference." It was not that he had not considered killing his way into the Jade Lake Sacred Land in the most forceful manner and forcing them to hand over his daughter. However, when he thought about how his daughter was in the other party's hands, no matter what the other party's motive was, if he went in this way, the relationship between the two parties would definitely be strained. The safest way was to follow the rules. At most, he would act according to the situation. Subsequently, Hu Fei took the initiative to lead Yi Chun and Yi Chun into Dust Province. Along the way, he explained many things about Dust Province to the two of them. According to him, there were a total of 4 major forces in Dust Province. There were the Hu family, the Great Zhou royal family, the Mystic Master Guild, and the Alchemy Guild. Among them, it was rumored that the Hu family and the Great Zhou royal family had once produced Emperor's Throne powerhouses. However, Emperor's Throne powerhouses had a limited lifespan and could not escape the cycle of reincarnation. With the fall of Emperor's Throne powerhouses, the Hu family and the Great Zhou royal family gradually declined. Even so, no one in Dust Province dared to provoke them. After all, no one knew how powerful a family that had an Emperor's Throne powerhouse was. As the name suggests, the Mystic Masters Union is a union formed by Mystic Masters, and its internal members are all Mystic Masters. However, the Mystic Masters Union's background couldn't be compared to the other two. The Mystic Masters Union was also a powerful force in the entire ancient barren world. It was just that there were many branches scattered all over the place. As for the Pill Alliance, it was an alliance formed by countless pill refining families in Dust Province. They befriended many experts through their pills. Under normal circumstances, even the Mystic Master Union wouldn't dare provoke them. In less than 4 hours, Hu Fei led the two of them to a huge city and said respectfully, "Supreme Lord, we have arrived at the location of the Dan Alliance." Yi Chun looked in the direction of the voice and saw a purple pill furnace that was 300 meters tall standing in the city. The entire city was filled with a faint pill fragrance that made one feel refreshed. "High Lord, that is the Dan Alliance." Hu Fei looked at the huge pill furnace with awe. Although this was not the first time he had come here, every time he came, he would be shocked by this building. It's quite imposing. Yichen nodded lightly. He seemed to be used to it. After all, on Earth, there was a building that looked like a giant Moutai bottle at the place where Moutai was. The two of them followed Hu Fei toward the huge pill furnace building. Along the way, they saw many people who had the same goal as them. Wow, Grandpa, that pill furnace is so big, so tall. A purple-clothed young girl followed behind a red-robed old man and looked at the Dan Alliance headquarters in shock. Such a huge pill furnace. How many people do you need to refine pills? Idiot. The red-robed old man shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It's just a building, not a real pill furnace. Although he said that, his eyes were still filled with respect. To alchemists like them, the Dan Alliance was no different from Holy Land. Even Yi-chun was amused by the purple-clothed girl's silly words. Seeing that, the purple-clothed girl made a face at him in embarrassment and annoyance. There were many people like the grandfather and grandson duo. Clearly, they were here to participate in the alchemy conference. When Yi-chun followed Hu Fei into the Dan Alliance, he saw that the hall was already crowded. Some of them were gathering together to catch up, while others that they did not know introduced themselves, causing everyone's expressions to change. A cry of surprise came from the crowd. Isn't that Master Gua from Luling City? I didn't expect him to be here personally. Everyone immediately looked in the direction of the voice and noticed the red-robed old man and the purple-clothed young girl. Someone forced a smile and said, Master Gua, you're the number one of the Dan Alliance competition 50 years ago. You're already a grade 7 alchemist. I didn't expect you to be unable to hold it in anymore. Everyone, please forgive me. Master Gua cupped his fists and smiled. It's not that I can't hold it in, but my granddaughter's lifelong wish is to join the Jade Lake Holy Land. Now, she can't wait to witness the unparalleled scene of the Jade Lake Convention. My lord, this person's name is Gua Hong. In the corner, Hu Fei looked at the red-robed old man with respect and introduced. This person won first place in the alchemy competition 50 years ago with a top-grade 6 medicinal pill. It seems like he has become a grade 7 alchemist now. As he spoke, he added, the Dan Alliance's medicinal pills are divided into 9 grades. Grade 1 is the lowest, and grade 9 is the highest. Each grade is divided into 4 grades: low grade, medium grade, high grade, and top grade. What about above grade 9? Yichen asked. Hu Fei took a deep breath in and said, medicinal pills above grade 9 are known as heavenly pills. Anyone who can refine heavenly pills can be said to be an alchemy master. Even in the Dan Alliance, there's only the patriarch of Pill River. Just as everyone was flattering Gua Hong, a disdainful voice came from outside the hall. He's just a grade 7 alchemist who exhausted his potential to advance. Why does he have to be called master? As the voice fell, the entire place instantly fell silent. The red-robed old man's expression changed slightly. The purple-clothed young girl behind him looked in the direction of the voice angrily. Under everyone's gaze, a group of people slowly walked in from outside the hall. The leader was a young man in a golden robe. The young man was extraordinarily handsome, but his brows were filled with arrogance and arrogance. It's Zhou Xinghe from the great Zhou royal family. Zhou Xinghe? Could it be the third prince of the great Zhou dynasty, who was born with a pill cloud and was later taken in as a direct disciple by the patriarch of Pill River? That's right, it's him. It said that this kid was able to refine grade 2 medicinal pills at the age of 8, grade 3 medicinal pills at the age of 10, and grade 7 medicinal pills at the age of 20. At that moment, the entire hall was in an uproar. It was as if bees were building a nest. It was extremely noisy. Gua Hong's expression changed drastically. Clearly, he had recognized the former's illustrious identity. At this moment, a bearded old man in a red robe walked out. Young Master's sudden arrival at the Dan Alliance really makes this old man feel uneasy. It's Elder Ge from the Dan Alliance. Someone immediately revealed the former's identity. Elder Ge, I originally disdained to share the stage with these pieces of trash. Zhou Xinghe glanced at Gua Hong in disdain and said, however, I have a friend who also wants to participate in the Jade Lake meeting. Unfortunately, he doesn't have an invitation. so I have no choice but to make a trip? What are you saying? The purple-clothed girl behind Guahong was so angry that her face turned ashen. Zhou Xinghe sneered, then turned around and pointed at a green-clothed woman behind him. Elder Ge, this is Lu Yao from the Lu family. Lu Yao greets Elder Ge. The green-clothed woman called Lu Yao immediately smiled. Elder Gu hurriedly returned the greeting, then looked at Zhou Xinghe with a slightly solicitous expression. Young master, if your friend needs an invitation, just tell this old man and I will give it to you. There's no need to go through so much trouble. It wasn't his fault for being so solicitous, but the latter's master was the Dan Alliance's patriarch, and it was related to his future advancement. Then there's no need. Zhou Xinghe smiled proudly. I still have to follow the rules. Since the alchemy competition has decided the ownership of the invitation, how can I overstep it? At this point, he looked at the people around him with slight disdain. Besides, how can this group of trash be a match for me in the Tao of Alchemy? With that said, everyone was furious, but they didn't dare to say anything. However, most of them felt bitter in their hearts. Originally, they thought that their alchemy skills were not bad, so they tried to come and see if they could get an invitation. Unexpectedly, Guahong, the 7th grade alchemist, appeared first, and then Zhou Xinghe, the disciple of an alchemy grandmaster. Most importantly, not only was the latter's talent astonishing, but the great Zhou royal family behind him was also the overlord of the Xinzhou province, which many people looked up to. End of this chapter. Chapter 1188. All right, since everyone is here, let's begin the alchemy competition. Gu Changlao looked around and said with a faint smile, if anyone wants to participate in the competition, please step forward and sign up. The hall fell into silence as soon as he said that. Everyone looked at each other. Although they were tempted, no one dared to step forward. After all, Zhou Xinghe's intention was very obvious. He was determined to win first place in the competition. Aside from his shocking alchemy skills, who would dare to go against him with the great Zhou royal family behind him? When Zhou Xinghe saw this, the arrogance on his face grew even more intense. Is everyone willing to participate? Gu Changlao looked at that with a faint smile. He was happy to see it happen. Since no one is participating, the first place in the competition will go to young Master Zhou. Before he could finish, Guahong took a step forward and said in a deep voice, I'll try. Everyone's expression changed. They secretly thought that Master Guo was indeed Master Guo. He knew that there was a tiger in the mountain, but he still went to the mountain. Zhou Xinghe's expression turned grim. Subsequently, he scoffed and said, Old thing, since you insist on humiliating yourself, let's start with the two of us. I'll let you know the difference between us. Don't make it sound so bad. The purple-clothed girl said indignantly. The competition hasn't even started. How do you know you'll win? Guahong looked calm. Let's begin. Elder Gu said, since only Master Guo and young Master Zhou are participating, I'll announce wait. At this moment, an indifferent voice sounded from a corner. Everyone held their breaths and looked over. They saw a young man in green walking out of the crowd slowly. Is this brat here to participate in the alchemy competition too? He's so young. He's a grade 2 alchemist at most. How does he have the confidence to compete with Master Guo and young Master Zhou? A newborn calf is really fearless. The entire hall was in an uproar when they saw how young Yi Chun was. The young man was Yi Chun. Guahong was slightly shocked. Subsequently, he shook his head. Clearly, he had the same thought as everyone else. On the other hand, the young lady in purple behind him gave Yi Chun a thumbs up. Elder Gu frowned. Who are you? Yi Chun said calmly. Why do you care who I am? There's no rule that I can't participate in the alchemy competition this time. Elder Gu was enraged. Just as he was about to reprimand Elder Gu, Hu Fei stepped forward and sneered. Elder Gu, I brought the High Lord here. Is there a problem? As Hu Fei stepped forward, everyone's spirits were lifted. Even Zhou Xinghe, who was initially disinterested, was no exception. So, it's young Master Hu from the Hu clan. Elder Gu was taken aback at first. Then he said with great surprise, since this young man was invited by young Master Hu, there's naturally no problem. Hu Fei responded with a sneer. On the other hand, Zhou Xinghe said in a mocking tone, Hu Fei, you actually addressed a brat as High Lord? Aren't you afraid of losing face for your Hu clan? You don't have to worry about that. Hu Fei smiled proudly and said with a fanatical expression, the High Lord's ability is not something you can imagine. I advise you to admit defeat as soon as possible so that you don't embarrass yourself. Zhou Xinghe flew into a rage. If that's the case, let's begin. Elder Gu interrupted the duo's argument and said, please show us your alchemy certificate. Guohong and Zhou Xinghe nodded at the same time. Then they took out a piece of metal that looked like bronze. Their names were engraved on the front, while the words Alchemy Guild were engraved on the back. Seeing that Yi Chun did not move, Elder Gu could not help but say, young man, please show us your alchemy certificate. What alchemy certificate? Yi Chun frowned. There was an uproar as soon as that was said. Oh my God, I thought this brat might have some ability when I saw how confident he was at first. I didn't expect him to not even have an alchemy certificate. How can he be called an alchemist without an alchemy certificate? I think this brat is here to cause trouble. Even Hu Fei was a little surprised. Ha ha ha, a brat who doesn't even have an alchemy certificate dares to participate in the competition? Zhou Xinghe laughed out loud, as if he had heard something funny. Hu Fei, is this the omnipotent High Lord that you mentioned? It's good to have a brain. I hope you have one too. Elder Gu looked at Yi Chun with a grim expression. Young man, the so-called alchemy certificate is a certificate that an ordinary person can use to refine pills at the Alchemy Guild. He squinted as he spoke to this point. You're here to participate in the competition without even an alchemy certificate. I can take it that you're here to cause trouble. Yi Chun smiled calmly as everyone watched. Can I just take the test now? The place fell into dead silence as soon as that was said. Everyone looked at Yi Chun as if they were looking at an idiot. If you don't even have an alchemy certificate, it means that you don't know alchemy. Even if you pass the test, you're just a grade 1 alchemist at most. You're just a grade 1 alchemist. You're no different from an apprentice. How dare you participate in the competition? No matter how hard Elder Gu tried to suppress his temper, he could not help but be enraged at that moment. Elder Gu, since he's so confident, you can arrange for him to take the test. Zhou Xinghe said wryly, I'm curious how a piece of trash who doesn't know alchemy can defeat me. All right. Elder Gu suppressed his anger and waved his hand. Immediately, a beautiful lady brought Yi Chun to another hall in the Alchemy Guild. Zhou Xinghe looked at Hu Fei and scoffed. Hu Fei, I believe that you'll definitely be famous when the news of what happened today reaches your Hu family. You don't have to worry about that. Hu Fei said with a calm expression, if my lord is the same as you guys, why would he be my lord? From the beginning until the end, he was extremely passionate about Yi Chun. He did not feel disappointed at all. Then I'll wait and see. Zhou Xinghe smirked in a peculiar manner. He then looked at Guohong and said, old man, among everyone here, only you're qualified to fight me. Why don't we begin now? Sure. Guohong nodded. Elder Gu led the duo to the alchemy room immediately. The rest in the hall followed immediately. Nobody cared if Yi Chun could pass the Alchemy Guild assessment or not. Even if he passed, to them, he was no different from a clown. Only Hu Fei and Xiao He were still waiting where they were, in the Alchemy Guild's Alchemy Guild Assessment Hall. After the lady with the medal on her chest led Yi Chun in, she said calmly, there are the ingredients for a grade 1 medicinal pill before you. You may begin now. After saying that, he sat down and picked up the spirit fruit beside him. He started eating it expressionlessly. Empty nether herb, a low-grade spirit herb. It's one of the supplementary ingredients for refining the spirit-gathering pill. I didn't expect to see it here. Bloodthirsty flower, a low-grade spirit herb. It's one of the supplementary ingredients for refining the spirit-gathering pill. 100 spirit fruit, a low-grade spirit herb. Yi Chun looked over and saw that the huge wooden shelf was wrapped in a formation. Meanwhile, there were spirit herbs inside the formation's light screen. The only thing that disappointed him was that the spirit herbs before him were all low-grade spirit herbs. They were useless to him. The Alchemy Guild is one of the 4 overlords of Dust Province after all. They shouldn't be so poor. It seems like the good stuff isn't here. Yi Chun figured it out in a blink of an eye. Subsequently, He walked forward slowly and took out many spirit herbs. 5 chien of chi amalgamation herb, 1 vitality, nourishing fruit, 2 ice spirit flowers, and 1 continuous root. It's perfect for refining the spirit-gathering pill. After Yi Chun collected all the ingredients, he slapped the pill furnace in front of him. The ground fire was born, and all the ingredients were poured into the pill furnace after some time. Just as the examinee was about to fall asleep, she suddenly smelled a strange medicinal fragrance. As soon as the medicinal fragrance entered her nose, she immediately felt that the sealed acupoints in her body were showing signs of loosening. She turned around subconsciously and saw a medicinal pill that was enshrouded in colorful light. The medicinal pill floated in the air like a small sun. It was extremely dazzling. The pill produces a phenomenon, and the fragrance lingers. The examinee's eyes widened as her body trembled. She said while trembling, "Heavenly pill, this is a heavenly pill." At the same time, in the alchemy room, Guo Hong and Zhou Xing were concentrating on refining pills, while the spectators held their breaths as they watched this scene unfold before them. No one dared to make a sound because once an alchemist's pill refinement was interrupted, it was equivalent to forming a life-and-death feud. Elder Ge was also watching with a nervous expression on his face. At that moment, a stuttering voice came from outside. "Elder Ge, be bad news, bad news." Elder Ge frowned. In the next moment, the examinee from before rushed in a panic. She pointed at Yi Chun, who was behind her, and said, "Elder Ge." Elder Ge was shocked at first when he saw the alchemist certificate in Yi Chun's hand. Then, he said, "All right, I know he passed the assessment and became a Tier 1 alchemist. Get lost." And no, the examinee opened her mouth. "Get lost." Elder Ge swept his sleeve and sent the examinee flying. He then said to Yi Chun, "Don't think that you can be complacent just because you become a Tier 1 alchemist." As he said that, he could not help but look at Guo Hong and Zhou Xinghe, who were refining medicinal pills. If I were you, I'd open my eyes wide and take a good look at these 2 seniors' pill refinement techniques. Even if you learn 1/10,000th of it, it'll be enough for you to benefit for the rest of your life. P.S. Sorry for the long wait. Although it's only 3 chapters, it's equivalent to 4 chapters. Usually, 1 chapter is 2,000 words, and 4 chapters are 8,000 words. However, the 3 chapters today are 7,800 words. End of chapter. Chapter 1189. Yi Chun looked at Guo Hong and Zhou Xinghe, who were refining pills after hearing what Elder Ge said. He chuckled softly and said, "Should I call them seniors?" After Mad Southern, Yi stepped into the cultivation world. His aptitude was initially mediocre. However, he still managed to cultivate all the way from the cruel cultivation world to the immortal world. He even became an immortal and founded a great immortal kingdom. This was all because of his alchemy skills. In just 3,000 years, he had refined countless medicinal pills with the help of the immortal drift bottle. No one knew how high his attainments in alchemy were. Now, Elder Ge actually said that Guo Hong and Zhou Xinghe, the 2 so-called masters and geniuses, were actually his seniors. It was a little ridiculous. Seeing that he was actually laughing, Elder Ge scoffed. "I meant well. It's fine if you don't believe me. They're starting to refine the medicinal herbs." At that moment, someone reminded softly. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Guo Hong pinched a seal, and 8 Dharma arrays immediately condensed in the void. 8 beams of flames of different temperatures surged out of the 8 formations and poured into the 8 apertures of the pill furnace. There were 3 grade, 7 medicinal herbs in front of him. As expected of Master Guo, he's able to form formations out of thin air so easily and skillfully. Someone could not help but exclaim. The purple-clothed girl clenched her fists tightly as she watched the scene nervously. She secretly cheered for her grandfather. Subsequently, Guo Hong controlled the 8 flames with one hand to prevent them from being extinguished. He used his other hand to throw all the medicinal herbs that had been categorized into the pill furnace and focused on extracting the medicinal herbs. The process of alchemy was generally fire control, extraction, smelting, pill condensation, pill cultivation. Controlling the fire was especially important because different medicinal herbs required different temperatures. Some medicinal herbs would lose their medicinal properties if their temperature was too high, while some medicinal pills would consume a lot of energy if their temperature was too low. Extraction was to refine the required medicinal properties one by one from the medicinal herbs. Then, it would turn into medicinal liquid and be refined into powder by the alchemy fire. Then, it would turn into a pill using a fixed method. The last step was to refine the pill. Every step was extremely strict. It required precise calculations and multitasking. Any mistake would result in failure on the verge of success. It's just a small trick. Zhou Xinghe sneered upon seeing this, before forming a finger seal. 13 formations immediately appeared in the air, before 13 flames gushed into the cauldron. 13 arrays? Young Lord Zhou can actually form 13 Dharma arrays at once. He actually has 5 more than Master Gua. Rumor has it that the leader of the Alchemy Guild, Patriarch Danhe, created a technique to control fire, which also consists of 13 arrays. Could it be that young Master Zhou received all of Patriarch Danhe's teachings? Many people secretly gasped at the sight of this. Clearly, they were stunned by Zhou Xinghe's control over fire. Even Elder Ji's eyes flickered with envy. It's the ancestor's imperial spirit technique. The ancestor used this technique to become an alchemy grandmaster. Following that, the crowd held their breaths as they stared fixedly at the process of Guohong and Zhou Xinghe refining the pills, not daring to make the slightest noise. On the other hand, Yi Chun was disinterested. He secretly shook his head from time to time. This Guohong actually used the stupidest method of smelting the medicinal liquid with pure fire. Little did he know that this would cause a lot of medicinal properties to be lost. And this Zhou Xinghe, he clearly has 13 Dharma arrays, but he reversed the order and separated 5 of them. It's no different from taking off his pants to fart. The purple-clothed girl could not help but whisper when she saw him, shaking his head, "Little brother, it's okay if you don't understand. At most, I'll get Grandpa to guide you after this." Yichen smiled. He thought to himself that this little girl was quite kind, so he reminded her kindly, "Your grandpa is going to lose." The purple-clothed girl was stunned when she heard that. Why? Although Yi Chen's voice was neither loud nor soft, the people around him still heard it. At that moment, many people glared at him. A grade 5 alchemist present sneered. A brat who just obtained a grade 1 alchemist certificate dares to boast shamelessly? Bad guy, I'm ignoring you. The purple-clothed girl turned her head away angrily. 2018, Yi Chun smiled and did not explain. As time passed, 2 hours later, a lot of mist suddenly surged out of Zhou Xinghe's cauldron. As the mist dispersed, a rich medicinal fragrance spread. Young Master Zhou has completed the pill. The onlookers could not help but be excited. In the next moment, a white glow bloomed from the cauldron. Subsequently, Zhou Xinghe removed the formation and slapped the cauldron lid. Whoosh! A white elixir shot out at once. Instantly, the medicinal fragrance spread, causing countless people to be intoxicated. The innate spirit-clearing barrier-breaking pill. It's a grade 7 medicinal pill, the innate spirit-clearing barrier-breaking pill. Zhou Xinghe waved his sleeve and put the medicinal pill into the bottle. After that, he got up and tossed it to Elder Ge for appraisal. A grade 7 medicinal pill, the innate spirit-clearing barrier-breaking pill. Elder Ge secretly took a deep breath in and said after a pause, middle grade. If a cultivator consumes this pill, it can remove mental barriers, clear the mind, and nourish the soul. It will reduce the chance of chi deviation. The crowd was in an uproar when they heard that. A middle grade 7 medicinal pill. The crowd did not expect Zhou Xinghe to be able to refine such a high-quality medicinal pill at such a young age. Rumble, at the same time, Guohong's cauldron shone brightly as well. Then a white glow fell into the bottle. Elder Ge took it and appraised it. A grade 7 medicinal pill, the Lunar Vitality Enhancement Pill. It has the effect of strengthening one's foundation and nourishing the 8 meridians. For a moment, the crowd was shocked. They stared at Elder Gu with their eyes wide open, trying to figure out which of the two medicinal pills was better. The most nervous person was the purple-clad girl. Under everyone's gaze, Elder Gu continued, "However, this pill has a flaw. It only has 3/4 of the medicinal effect. Therefore, it is appraised as a low-grade grade 7 medicinal pill." He paused for a moment before he slowly said, "Therefore, young Master Zhou wins this alchemy battle." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present looked at Zhou Xinghe. Their gazes filled with envy and respect. Guohong could not help but look disappointed. His brows were filled with self-blame. The purple-clad girl behind him was like a defeated rooster, her head lowered. Elder Gu looked at Guohong. "Master Gu, do you have any objections to my judgment?" "No." Guohong smiled bitterly and bowed to Zhou Xinghe. "Young Master Zhou is able to refine a middle-grade grade 7 medicinal pill at such a young age. I'm inferior to you, and I admit my inferiority." "Grandpa." The purple-clad girl could not bear it. The rest nodded one after another. Clearly, they felt that Elder G's analysis was reasonable and fair. After all, everyone present was proficient in medicinal pills. As the victor, Zhou Xinghe looked at Guohong with disdain. "Old thing, I told you long ago. Why did you have to humiliate yourself? Idiot, let's go." Guohong could afford to lose. He turned around and pulled the purple-clad girl, whose eyes were bloodshot, away. "Since young Master Zhou has defeated Master Gu," Elder Gu glanced at the crowd and deliberately ignored Yichun. He said slowly, "Since there's no one else participating, I'll announce the winner of this alchemy competition." "Wait." Before he could finish, Zhou Xinghe suddenly interrupted him. The latter pointed at Yichun. Chapter 1190. As soon as Zhou Xinghe said that, after a moment of dead silence, there was an uproar and laughter. Although Zhou Xinghe was speaking in all seriousness, everyone present could hear the mockery and disdain in his voice. "Young Master Zhou, even Master Gu was defeated by you. How can this brat be your match?" Someone could not help but laugh. "That's right." A grade 5 pill refinement master looked at Yichun in disdain. "This brat has just obtained the certificate of a grade 1 pill refinement master. At most, he's just a beginner. How can he be young Master Zhou's match? Out of everyone here, any one of them would be able to defeat this kid." At that moment, the entire hall was filled with mockery. Even Elder Gu laughed. He could not help but look at Yichun and say, "Young man, do you know the difference between you and young Master Zhou now? If you know what's good for you, apologize to young Master Zhou." And apologize? Before he was done speaking, he heard Yichun say nonchalantly, "How can a piece of trash who doesn't know medicine be worthy of my apology?" The entire place fell into silence as soon as he said that. Everyone looked at Yichun as if they were looking at a lunatic. How dare he bet that young Master Zhou was trash? One must know that young Master Zhou's master was the patriarch of Elixir River. If he called him trash, wouldn't he be calling the patriarch of Elixir River too? What a sharp-tongued brat. Zhou Xinghe laughed out of anger. There was killing intent in his eyes when he looked at Yichun. "Since you're not convinced by me, let's fight. I'll make it clear first. If you lose, you'll kill yourself. Do you dare?" "What if you lose?" Yichun smiled wryly. "How could I possibly lose?" Zhou Xinghe subconsciously sneered, and then said, "If I lose to you in front of everyone, I will also commit suicide in front of everyone. Everyone can bear witness." "Sure, I'll play with you." Yichun seemed to be mocking. As soon as he said that, the only thought in everyone's mind was that this brat was crazy. He dared to accept the bet despite knowing that he would die. Guohong, who was planning to leave with his granddaughter, could not help but glance at Yichun. He said while shaking his head, "Young man, young Master Zhou is talented. He's not someone you can challenge. You should leave with me." Even though he did not know Yichun, he could not help but think of himself when he was young, when he saw Yichun challenge Zhou Xinghe at such a young age. Considering that Yichun might really die on the spot if he really lost, he could not bear to take Yichun away. The purple-clothed girl kindly reminded him, "Little big brother, come with us." "No need." Yichun looked at Zhou Xinghe sympathetically. "I only wanted the invitation. Since he wants to die, I'll fulfill his wish. What a pity. Guahong shook his head. Grandpa, the purple-robed girl tugged at the corner of his clothes tightly as a pleading look appeared on her face. Fine. Guahong sighed lightly. In the end, he still chose to stay and watch from the sidelines. He thought to himself, if this young friend loses, this old man will protect his life. All right then. Elder Ge took a good look at Zhou Xinghe and said, in this battle, both of you will refine a 7 transformation ice soul pill each. The time limit is 4 hours. There are no restrictions on the herbs, and you'll provide the pill recipe. The winner lives and the loser dies. As soon as he was done speaking, the entire place fell silent. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard the words 7 transformation spirit pill. They looked at Yi Chun as if they were looking at a dead man. When the purple-clothed girl saw the drastic change in everyone's expression, she could not help but ask Guahong, Grandpa, what's a 7 transformation ice soul pill? The so-called 7 transformation soul pill is a type of grade 7 medicinal pill. Guahong said with a terrible expression, this pill is rare and extremely difficult to refine. The process is complicated. Although it's a grade 7 medicinal pill, even some grade 8 pill alchemists can't refine it. The purple-clothed girl's face turned pale when she heard that. She looked at Yi Chun with sympathy. Guahong sighed softly too. There were many grade 7 medicinal pills, but Elder Ge insisted on refining the 7 transformation ice soul pill. Anyone who was smart would know that he was siding with Zhou Xinghe. After all, Zhou Xinghe's master was the Alchemy Guild's master, the patriarch of Pill River. As an alchemy master, he must have taught Zhou Xinghe the refining technique to refine the 7 transformation ice soul pill. Clearly, Yi Chun was a dead man from the beginning. Elder Ge lifted his head to look at Yi Chun. There was a gleam in his eyes. Young man, do you have any objections? No. Yi Chun shook his head. All right then. The two of you may begin. Elder Ge waved his sleeve, and 2 pill furnaces moved over immediately. Along with them were the herbs and pill recipes that he had prepared. Boom! Zhou Xinghe sat down abruptly. Then, he formed 13 formations just like before and poured 13 wisps of spiritual fire into the pill furnaces. He began to refine the pills with full focus. Someone exclaimed and pointed at Yi Chun. Look, what's he doing? Everyone looked over immediately and saw Yi Chun counting the ingredients in front of him at a steady pace. He was even shaking his head while holding the pill recipes. This brat must not know where to start. He doesn't even understand the pill recipes. That's true. He's just a grade 1 alchemy master. I'm afraid he can't even activate the pill furnaces, let alone refine the 7 transformation ice soul pill. I've lived for half my life, but this is the first time I've seen such a young man who wants to die. Strange. Many people were discussing among themselves. There was disdain and sympathy in their eyes when they looked at Yi Chun, but most of them were gloating. Guahong shook his head repeatedly when he saw that. The so-called 7 transformation ice soul pill is just a grade 3 medicinal pill in the cultivation world, the ice replenishment pill. I can't believe that it's considered a grade 7 medicinal pill here. Yi Chun looked at the pill recipe and could not help but shake his head. Moreover, the medicinal herbs in the recipe are messy. It's obvious that someone who doesn't understand medicinal herbs came up with it. Under everyone's gaze, he actually closed his eyes and sat cross-legged as if he had fallen asleep. This brat is really crazy. He's still thinking about cultivating a time like this? One must know that the time limit is only 4 hours. If he continues to waste time like this, how can he refine medicinal pills? What if he knows that he's going to die? So he gave up early and chose to accept his fate. Some people scoffed while others shook their heads. The young lady in purple looked at Yi Chun with concern. She could not help but frown and say, Grandpa, what exactly is little brother doing? I don't understand either. Guahong shook his head lightly and said with a sigh, when I saw how confident this little friend was earlier, I might have thought that he was a master of alchemy. Now it seems like, clearly, even he was disappointed in Yi Chun. Time passed bit by bit. Everyone had completely lost interest in him. They kept their eyes on Zhou Xinghe. An hour later, Zhou Xinghe had extracted 49 types of medicinal herbs and completely liquefied the medicinal essence. Another hour passed. Zhou Xinghe condensed all the medicinal liquid essences into powder and tried to fuse them with the alchemy technique. However, everyone realized that Yi Chun was still motionless. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. An hour later, everyone was shocked to discover that the temperature in the room had dropped suddenly. Then, the ground and the walls were frozen at a speed visible to the naked eye. End of this chapter.